And we're live. Hello, I'm James Brown, and this is Media Studies live on a Saturday afternoon. I'm here with Sabby Reyes Kulkarni.
Hello, happy to be here. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. How is feedbackdef.substack.com?
Well, I would say it's pretty good, although I keep bringing up pieces I'm working on. I'm working on 3 pieces right now for Substack, and each one I thought, yeah, I'll just bang it out. And I wanted to have them done by today, and they're still in the works. So,
you know, I have similar vibes in that there's all these things I've been working on and been meaning to do, and I just haven't been able to do them. I haven't get to them, and it'll happen. I'm not stopping either, and neither are you.
Right, it's happening. I mean, I worked a lot on these pieces this week. I just want to share one of the titles with you, which I think I might change now in the wake of all this diss track stuff. But I know you're going to tell me not to change the title, but it's called "I'd rather have their music shot out of a rhino's diuretic asshole directly in my face for 10 hours straight than listen." Then listen to them talk to Bill Simmons, which we'll get to.
Are you sure you don't want to start with that instead of diss tracks?
I mean,
we could go to diss tracks first, but holy crap, man.
That was my spontaneous response to getting, well, I guess we might as well start with that. I didn't mean to do that, but the diss track thing has me rethinking, that's kind of fucked up. And also, it's not only punching up, it's like a microbe on an ant's ass, like punching Colossus or something. Like Bill Simmons it's the apex of everything we're doing. And then there's like me, with tiny number of followers,
Bill would have done that. It sounds like something that Bill Simmons would have wrote.
Okay.
Bill Simmons punched up.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, when you enter a space or are in a space and you are thinking about, you're trying to rise in a space, people punch up. Punching up is common.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this. The subtitle is "A Pearl Jam Appreciation Post." so I mean, and I give Bill Simmons a lot of credit in the piece too. It's the piece is not actually as I don't know, overheated as that title. That's just what I spontaneously text messaged my friend when I saw and was horrified by this like picture of like a YouTube interview that Bill Simmons did with a couple of the dudes from Pearl Jam, and I was like, fuck that. That was just off the top of my head. I was like, oh, that's a great title.
Well, let's just talk about it. What irritated you about Bill Simmons interviewing Pearl Jam?
Man, it wasn't even fucking 30 seconds in. I was just like, man, I can't watch this. So let me just, if I may, because this is in your wheelhouse. I first want to just establish what makes him awesome and why he is such a towering media figure, right? That's super important. And the thing where I discovered him was he was on page 2 on ESPN right before Grantland, and he had this. I don't remember if it was the mailbag. I think that's just what he called it, the mailbag.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, like, so obviously people would write in, email, and he would answer, and his riffing sense of humor, like, and these were kind of fairly short, super short sometimes responses. Just rapid fire, man, was so funny. And I thought it was like so genius, like the way he did that. And I feel like that was the precursor to what we are now all doing, like in you know, when you live stream and people like comment and you clap back at them and you get into it with them. That was like a what do you call it? Prototype of
Yeah.
what we're all doing all the time. And he wasn't going back and forth, but it was like they wrote in and he answered back, and that was it. And as he rose in his media, like basically built a media empire, he's just such an inspirational story. I mean, what he was doing was like literally like the guy in his fucking basement. I don't know if he was in the basement, but just in his house, firing off these like quips, and then that he turns that into ESPN, Grantland, and now The Ringer.
Mhm.
And it's like, damn, that's like like such an impressive career trajectory.
You want to
But
back up a little bit further?
yeah, sure.
So it's mid 90s. Bill Simmons is out of college and nobody will hire him as a sports writer. He can't get a job. And he wanted to be a sports writer, and he ends up writing for, I believe, if I remember correctly, he had his own sports site. He just created a blog.
Right.
Started
I
writing
forgot what it was called, but yes.
and I think he made it on, I forget which Boston paper, but it was one of the smaller Boston papers. He started making it there. Then he ends up sort of in the AOL fan house kind of area, all before page 2. It just sort of he was just grinding. He was working as a bartender and was grinding out these articles. And some of them took off, and all before he began his ascent on page 2, on the way to, gaining power in the ESPN ecosystem, creating Grantland onward. On the way to selling The Ringer for $200 million.
Whew. I mean, so that has to be the first thing out of my mouth when it's like putting it in context. Here's this person that is in so many ways an inspiration. And then like so Pearl Jam did an interview with him. They did an interview with Zane Lowe, also at the apex of what any music journalist / interviewer like me would fucking kill, or at least, if you're hosting for Apple Music, that is essentially the top of Mount Everest, it's one of them, right?
Apple Music.
Okay, fine, but it's still your mom.
Everything they say about me is true.
If you got that gig, it is the ultimate sort of prestige gig, I think. Not in terms of what you and I value necessarily, but in terms of what like is instantly recognizable. You're like, oh, I host the show for Apple Music. Everybody will go, oh, okay. And then Howard Stern, of course, he's got his own interviewing style. And I look at all three of them and I'm like, they all bring so many strengths to the table and yet don't really view the interview as something to take seriously enough. Zane Lowe, I think, is an exception here. But they all fumble the ball in these huge ways on these huge platforms with all their talent. And it's very disappointing. And Bill Simmons in particular, I don't think translates for me. His podcast numbers will tell you different. Obviously, he does incredible numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't translate as well voice-wise, or on video, as he did in print. He was so witty and so funny in print. I like his morning walk, like quick, short videos. Like he's walking and he's like, oh, I just have this thought I want to share with you. And it's over. I like him in like super rapid fire, bite-sized format. Then Grantland, I was impressed by how fucking long those pieces were, but I'm like, damn, dude. Like this guy can go on and on. And I am not a person of few words, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there was something about that was charming too. But I feel like he's such a big media presence. He doesn't really have to do that much he doesn't approach an interview like, oh, I'm doing something I have to really try to take seriously. It's like, oh, I'm just hanging with two dudes from Pearl Jam and we're talking about sports, and it seems like squandering an opportunity. So that was my issue with that.
And I do get the sense that his approach to interviewing. It's a hang. It's not oh, I'm going to drill down and try to hit someplace really important, really strong, really anything like that. It's hey, I want to make this person comfortable. And then we can we'll beat around a bush and maybe we'll get to something profound or interesting or strong. I have a few different points I want to get to and swim toward, but this is not a really firm direction interview. I am probably closer to him than certainly you are, because
Right.
I do like to sort of ground it in this sort of like, all right, we're sharing this moment together. Let's get comfortable and work our way through it to where we want to go, and so that I'm surprised and they're surprised. It's a jazzy approach to interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And yours is more, from what I've heard of you, and I was watching you, at least I was it Corey Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
It felt more structured. It felt like you were definitely prepared. Maybe not necessarily more, but you had a way, and many interviewers have this approach where they are directing the ship where they want it to go. I think Simmons is like, it's going to go where it's going to go. I have this unique moment with, for example, Kevin Durant. Those interviews, I thought they were very interesting. I didn't think they were great. I thought they were interesting, and they're definitely unique. And it was essentially, hey, I'm just going to share this with you, and I'm going to talk about the stuff I find interesting about you, and about your career and your career arc and your larger space, but no real direction.
Right. See, I hate that. I don't like, dude, listening to Dan Le Batard and his morning crew just fuck around for an hour is like fucking nails on a blackboard to me. I go into interviews. The mental picture I always get is like, you're about to pitch 8 innings. And there's some dudes that like did that, and you could see on their fucking faces like how important it was to them, or like a cross examiner or something. But I do get to that rapport that's important to me, and it always goes places I wasn't expecting. And then, I recently had an interview with one of my all-time musical idols, the founder of the founder of the band Helmet. He bumped into something in the back of the room right as we got on Zoom, and I threw my structure completely out the window, and it was the most incoherent, but it was also a fucking great time. We just shot the shit about music for 2.5 hours. But I said at the beginning, I'm like, I don't think this is even listenable. I'm going to post it. But typically speaking, I like to have definitely something to work from, and just the flow of a conversation. And just, it's the same thing I said about Jake Paul, right? Like, he's got the athletic ability, but he hasn't devoted himself to this vocation. And that's what I get from certainly Bill Simmons and from Howard Stern. Howard Stern could be the world's greatest interviewer ever, probably, because he has a way of getting people to say things they wouldn't say, but he interrupts. He's not prepared. He doesn't do, it's like, there's nothing, he's not taking it seriously, what you could get from asking a question. And I find that very, very, very unfortunate.
I don't like Howard at all, interview wise. I don't understand the love of his interview style, or it is unique that he gets a celebrity to talk for a couple hours, and he'll often do it in person, and sure, okay, maybe they're a bit more revealing. All right, fine. I don't find anything great about his process or approach that I am attached to on any level. I think he's okay. I think he is pretty narcissistic, and it comes through. And I find his show, I have to admit I haven't listened to it a ton, but I have listened to bootlegs of it, and I've listened to lots of long clips of interviews he's done in recent years. But I find it unlistenable.
Mm,
Simmons, I don't see that way.
mm.
Simmons, I guess I'm more forgiving, I guess, but what's Stern, I have no forgiveness for the quote king of all media, you know?
So, and my issue with Stern is God, he interrupts so much. Oh
Mhm.
my God. It's like, Jesus Christ. I don't know if I have to have told you this. Around, it must have been 2014, somewhere around there. Because I have this same issue with Mark Maron, who I find unlistenable. And again, it's like Mark Maron had Obama on, you know what I'm saying? Not that I don't have a roster of people that are no slouches either, but I mean, to have that kind of access, Obama, Keith Richards, he is an A-lister, you know, a of the people he can get, and doesn't prep at all. And I understand it's supposed to be like, oh, I'm just sitting shooting the shit, kind of like, what I said before. But he just asks like preposterously unprepared questions and then interrupts people all the time. And it's like, wow, that's a huge fucking waste. And he doesn't take it seriously. And it's being sold as, oh yeah, I'm not structured, just come hang. This is like no pressure, just come hang, watch us hang. I look at it as like pissing away an art form. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference between improvisation and just jerking off. You know what I mean? And similarly, Rick Beato, Rick Beato is from our town where we live. He was just inducted into the Rochester Musicians Hall of Fame or Music Hall of Fame. Obviously, killing it on the YouTube numbers and the podcast. But he said on Evan Dawson's show at your former haunt XXI, he doesn't prepare either. Now he said he does take the interview seriously, but why would you go into something not having just off the cuff? He's another one who interrupts too much. Dude, I love Rick Beato's musical analysis breakdowns. They're amazing. That's his brand. That's what built his channel. I'm not a fan of his. As somebody who's worked on my technique and decided to do that, I have a hard time watching it because he's just like, yeah, I'm not going to prepare, you know?
The thing I want to double down and there are a couple pieces and a question I'll follow with, is the amount of self-control it takes in those circumstances. To not interrupt, to be cool with the fact that there may be an uncomfortable silence because you don't know when the artist or person will stop talking, and to recover from that silence and still go into wherever you're going next, keeping track of all that, setting up a structure of that you can get through, also keeping track of the clock, because many of these, especially when I talk to more higher profile people, you're working with a tighter schedule. That's why part of the Stern Mark Maron element is that you get Obama for an hour. Who gets Obama for an hour? Nobody gets Obama for an hour. So that's part of why I think the fact that they're given that is what makes them at least appear interesting, appear higher end. In reality, in terms of just conducting interviews, I mean, there are very few places where you're going to get a high quality a celebrity interview that's more than a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that you ever really consistently did. Even the guys who were good at it, which I think Dave Letterman was very good at it.
Mm.
I people think I'm crazy, but I think Jay Leno was actually very good at it. But it's not going to be a long thing because hey, they're prepared. They know roughly what they want to be able to talk about. These guys were really good at engaging in pulling out different stuff, but only in a short framework. In the longer pieces, the people who I found really interested, we talked a little bit about Barbara Walters. I didn't think she was bad, but I didn't think she was brilliant either. But I thought she held her own over the course of an hour, over the course of a couple breaks, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. It's not easy to do, and she did it very well. The King, of course, my favorite, Larry King. People make fun of him all the time. But to get someone talking for an hour and keep him talking, and back, if you go and listen to his old radio show, he'd do it for 4 hours, 5 hours. And to keep it engaging, keep it interesting, it's a skill. I don't even think it's so much a talent. It's a thing that you got to hone. It's about self-control. It's about being aware in the moment and aware of different things and being willing and able to come back to certain concepts as they come up and come through. It's not an easy task at all. And my question for you that I mentioned earlier was, who did the Beato interview?
Well. On Evan.
On
It was Evan. It was a panel of people. He called into the show.
Okay.
From Atlanta, where he lives, and Evan was there, and Dan Kushner was there, and somebody else was there. So he was sort of talking to the bunch of people at the table. They have that table.
How do you feel about that kind of interview?
I didn't mind it. I thought it came off very well. I thought it was that can work nicely. See, you just said something. You talked about how it's a skill you hone. It's really rhythm is such a huge part of it, and it's establishing a rhythm and a rapport with a different dance partner each time. And
it's like a jam session.
Yes, and being able to, well, the Evan Dawson with a bunch of people is like a jam session, and it's like okay, now you're jamming with so and so today. Now you're jamming with so and so. Now you're jamming, or you're doing like a seminar or a clinic, right? With so and so, and you have to adjust. And holding that thought is such a huge part of that. And I mean, look, I get irritated when small children don't do this, and especially now we've talked about this where parents are not pushing back enough. But from a certain age on, even if you're a toddler, you can start to key in, okay, someone is saying something. Let me just hold on to what I'm about to say. Let them finish. What I always say to my daughter, it's like, okay, you're throwing the ball, I'm throwing the ball. It's like we're both kind of flowing, making music. And that may seem like overly I don't know if that comes across as like overly repressive to say that to a 6-year-old, but I know she can do it because in certain settings she will hold back, and then with us she's more familiar, so she'll interrupt more, right? And I try not to do that with her, and I'm trying to instill, because that back and forth is like the lifeblood of human interaction, right? Being able to just your question, about so yeah. I thought it came off well.
Yeah, I generally don't like that format.
It can be a mess. You need a crew of people that all work and adjust, like a band that is used to backing different musicians, right? Like, oh, we're the band, we're the house band. Okay, so who's coming in to hang with? Okay, now we know kind of how to feel this person out. And Rick Beato is a magnificent orator. So they ask him a question that he just gets to kind of wax
Mhm.
poetic for however long until they cut him off. That works great. I don't like him on the other side of it nearly as much. But I don't think he's fucking around. He doesn't lack intention. I just think he doesn't see it as something that requires rigor. He's like, well, I've got a great memory and I remember so many details about an artist. And again, he's like, oh, I just want to see where the conversation goes. I guess I'm too controlling for that.
I get your point. I get why you would be. I mean, it is your work. It is your. Um, I get art feels strong, but it is your art.
No, it is. I look at it that way. And you mentioned Barbara Walters. I think way more highly of Barbara Walters than you do. But other ones, Charlie Rose,
Mhm. Oh, Charlie was
Bob,
good at it.
Bob Costas.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
That was the motherfucker right there.
And fantastic in every form. He is like in terms of broadcasting, I can't think of there are a few people in his class. I mean, that dude was a fantastic. If you looked at later his old show that was late night on NBC, where he was doing celebrity interviews with politicians and interesting people, he did it magnificently. As an anchor, he was a magnificent anchor. He was fantastic.
Different format, yes, and it's a totally different piece.
Totally.
Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
Totally, and it fits your thing about dealing with a panel, like Ernie Johnson in the Inside the NBA panel. So you have Ernie Johnson, you have Shaq, who we'll mention later. You have Charles Barkley, you have Kenny Smith, and they are a harmony. They are a 4-part harmony. And we saw about a decade ago, as Shaq came in, this sort of integration of this new element of the harmony and how they were able to like slowly integrate this new fourth force into their 3-part harmony. And we saw this really interesting. Well, Costas could go from the one-on-one interview, be great. He could go to a 4-part harmony and be great. He could go and, oh, I'm just going to deliver a monologue and be fantastic. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to call a baseball game or a basketball game and be great. Like, he is a legend for many, many, many reasons. And that's certainly at the top of the list. He's maybe the most versatile broadcaster I've ever heard of. There's few people that may be in the rough class, but currently, modern era, Bob Costas.
Yeah, I mean, wow. And I was probably ruined by him because seeing him as like a young person, young adult, gave me permission to, because I remember he would get criticized, or at least by my friends, for asking long questions.
Sure.
Multi-part, and I don't do it 1/1000th as gracefully as he did. And it was still a little awkward when he did it sometimes. But man, the depth of those questions, the substance, you were getting like a real hearty dose of thought and exchange. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Bill Simmons could do that. Howard Stern definitely could do that. Zane Lowe is trying to do that. And they all kind of defeat themselves on the way. And, the band they've been interviewed a bunch, so they know how to give you something anyway. But this is something we're like awash in this kind of exchange now all the time. Look, Shannon is a really good one. I mean, I know he gets criticized for letting people talk way too long without interjecting. I happen to love that. But I mean, for somebody who wasn't practiced at that before, I think, fucking hats off to him, But he's sitting there taking it. I know he approaches this like the same way he would have approached the game plan for a football game. Not like he has to map out all the X's and O's and, if this person says this, then I got to do this. It's not so much like that. but I'm going into this arena. I'm going to give this my best efforts. That to me counts for so much.
I don't love Shannon. I do appreciate what he does. He's sort of feeling this sort of man. I'm trying to think of the role he is playing. It is sort of he is cornering a niche of not just black celebrity world on this show, but certainly black celebrity world. Trying to think of the right person. Charlie Rose of black celebrity ratchet culture.
I was gonna say, black trashy the straight man of black trashy gossip.
Straight man is perfect.
But with a veneer of, and I know it sounds like I'm contradicting what I just said, but with a veneer of, he's the respectable straight man who's going to dignify, but you're going to talk about all sorts of unseemly stuff that is really between genuine conversation and gossip, somewhere between there.
It's really worked for him. And I don't know about the long run, the long tail of it. And I think even he's hedged that, I think, with his nightcap show. Where it's usually a 2-part harmony there. Him and Chad Ochocinco or
Very
him
nice
and
harmony.
And they are, bouncing back and forth. And that's an easier format than, a straight up interview show or just going on your own.
Yeah, I mean, and it's definitely working for him. I mean, he's setting the internet on fire. I know you dispute and refute his claims of when he comes out with the stats. Like, I think he just released a picture saying that's the Cat Williams is the biggest interview in YouTube history. Yeah, and I just could picture your face, like saying, "Well, but he's getting backlash too." And, he's gotten into some close calls here, and stepped into some shit with this. And I think...
Do tell.
Well, I mean, the whole Mike Epps thing, which nearly escalated, which just dovetails perfectly with the diss tracks. But especially since there was Shaquille O'Neal just released a diss track. It's called Shannon. The subtitle is Shannon Sharpe Diss. It's called The Big Man Shannon Sharpe Diss, is what it's called. Where's JB in the background going, well, hold on a second. Hold on. Are these statistics real?
I before we get to, we'll get to Shaq in a moment. I don't doubt that he reached 68 million views on YouTube. Most watched interview in YouTube history. I don't even think that that's necessarily wrong.
You got to make your face big for the audience.
Okay. All right.
I just love the skepticism. Yeah.
I'll go solo on this one.
Yeah.
I don't think that Shannon Sharpe the numbers that Shannon Sharpe are presenting, 68 million views, are necessarily wrong. I'm not saying they are. It's quite possible that his show was viewed, that episode was viewed 68 million times. I have no doubt they were. Here's my problem with it. A view on social media is 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also the way that YouTube has been playing with its algorithm and its structure, it's become easier to get views now because there's an autoplay section as someone hovers over videos. So how much of it's that versus how much of it is just people seeking them out and because Cat Williams is amazing and Shannon Sharpe is amazing. I find it questionable. I also still don't believe that he made more in one episode of his show than he did in any year of his career, especially a guy who made 5 million in 1 year of his career. I don't think he made 5 million for even this YouTube program when he had 68 million views. I don't believe that at all. I think that is crap. But maybe he's got some weird deal with some brand that I don't know about. But I think that's pretty doubtful.
He wasn't saying it. He was presenting it as if it was just from the hits.
Yes.
Or from the traffic itself. So, I mean, regardless, that whatever it is, obviously that interview skyrocketed and is, pretty much, I mean, number one with a bullet for the time for our moment right now.
Yeah.
The question you and I, right. And the question you and I have brought up, and actually the fact that was posted, well, that came up in my feed. How recently was that posted? Was that the other day?
Okay, let me look at it.
I assume that, but
2 days ago. 2 days ago.
Okay.
Thursday.
Okay, so how many months ago was that interview?
That was in January.
Right. So that is a bad sign as far as I'm concerned. Because you and I asked on this show, or I asked you on this show, how is he going to be able to sustain this? And you said he's not going to be able to.
Yeah.
And then I asked you also, is he going to get typecast and stuck in the black celebrity gossip lane rather than being able to speak to whoever?
Which he has so far. Now, it's not, it's possible that he could get out of it eventually, that he could grow out of it. I mean, Joe Rogan kind of grew out of it, right? Where he was only talking to comedians and MMA fighters for a while. And then he sort of grew into more metaphysical, esoteric stuff. And he moved into, it became a platform for stuff he was just curious about.
Which is a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to know. He doesn't even have to know it enough to even know that he's curious, as long as it's like, oh, that's interesting. Right. So if Shannon gets another guest in another sphere who similarly lights the joint up the way Cat Williams did, and the numbers fucking just mushroom cloud, then he will be sought after. I would imagine there's people outside of the comedy black celebrity thing that are trying to get on the show anyway.
Without a doubt. And, this is a precursor to our conversation about disses, and Marcellus Wiley certainly fits in this, right? There's a reason why Kendrick Lamar and Drake wanted to be on ESPN. They are trying to dip their toe in another lane with another tranche of fans. And I could see someone, let's say you are, you're not Gary Owen white guy. Let's say you're, I don't know, Ryan Gosling, right? And you're trying to open a movie. I could see you looking at Shannon Sharpe, or your people, more likely.
Of course.
Your PR team looking at Shannon Sharpe and like, I want to connect with a black crowd. This sounds like a place where I could do that. And so I think that's certainly possible.
I mean, I don't see why he has to be limited to a black crowd, though.
Yeah, but I'm not saying limited entirely, but I'd say majority.
Okay.
What he's doing and who he's having on screams that. Glorilla? Come on.
Yeah. No.
And if you have it on Glorilla, you're not trying to speak outside your niche.
Right, and Brittany Griner and people like that.
Brittany Griner is actually more of a cross-cultural celebrity, as was the Johnny Manziel deal.
Yes. I mean, but he did that to himself, is what I'm saying. It's not because of his ability or his versatility as an interviewer that he needs to do that. I think he could go further very naturally, but he ended up striking gold early in this space. And so now I think he's gonna run the risk of getting stuck there, and
And
in
it's
the
smart.
long run limiting what he could be.
Well, it's smart to double down on it. I mean, like once you're there, you have a winning combination. Okay, like let's play it again. You know. So I get why he would, even if it's not the smartest thing.
And you mentioned Joe Rogan. I mean, Joe Rogan for me as an interviewer runs the gamut. Like I cannot stand his episodes where they're just smoking and fucking around and Jamie, blah 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 blah.
Sure.
Like that is like fucking nails in my head. It's
Mhm.
just like
Sure.
rattling around. But when he focuses, he's a fucking excellent or he has become one. I don't know if he always was. And when he starts to like corner, like I watched 2 clips of him where he was really staying on Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro separately about gay marriage and about
Mhm.
uh, their faith and where it stands on homosexuality being a sin. Man, that was incredible to watch. It was like fucking just carving them up and just not letting them get away with, and just slowly letting them hang themselves. It was awesome. So I mean, again, that's the value of focus. As far as just try, you know what I mean? And I think people get better results that way. But you're much more forgiving of the sit around and hang kind of.
I am, but I want to pivot back to Rogan there. Yeah, I think it is something he's developed. If you go look at those earlier, I think if Ben Shapiro were on for episode 200, I think he would have got away with a lot more stuff. I also think, and Shannon Sharpe does have this possibility in his back pocket. Rogan is in his own lane. He has okay, so he's got the comedian world. He's got the podcast world. He's got the UFC world, MMA. And he's got these multiple groups of fans that are all sort of where if he loses one a little from one, it doesn't really matter. Does it like they kind of all fill the space together. And with all that, I think he can approach most of his interviews with not giving a fuck. And when in that you're not, he doesn't need it. And the fact that he doesn't need it, and so many of these interviewers, especially the podcast interview world, really approach things like they need it. I think that allows him to say, if I hear bullshit, if I see bullshit, I'm just going to call it out because I'm not going to lose, because I could just talk to my friends and still get 10 million downloads an episode.
Well, and most people are still going to want to be on the show anyway. They're not going to be as quick to say we won't go back there. And they also, like Howard Stern, know what they're getting into at this point. And on top of it, a lot of the people who he would challenge would see him as something of a peer in the culture, right? Ben
Mhm.
Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and the Weinsteins were all lumped in with him
Mhm.
when they were branded as the intellectual dark web term I hate with a
Mhm.
passion. But so you get all that. It's like you can't, you'd be dumb to refuse. It's only certain people. Like I guess if
Euphoria.
Didn't mean to do that.
that's okay. I guess if like Prince were still alive or Michael Jackson, they could be like,
Yeah.
nope, you said something I didn't like. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Fuck you. Or don't air that or I'll sue the shit out of you kind of a thing. Those are really, or maybe, I don't think Obama would do that. I don't think Bill Clinton would do that. I think they would know going into it this guy's pretty fucking powerful in media. Let me just play along.
Yeah, and I think that's getting on that show is a big look. And it was interesting. It was a big look for Dave Portnoy. It was a big.
That says a lot.
It was a big look for Charlemagne the God. These are people who have a ton of eyeballs around on them, but their lanes are different than his lane. But touching his lane, I think Andrew Schultz called it the Rogan effect.
Yep. I was going to say it's a big hit.
Just sort of like it widened their world.
Yep.
In a way that we haven't really seen on TV, honestly, since Carson. It was tough even to utter that phrase, but I can't think of a more near-term analog. Maybe Oprah.
Yes. But why was it tough?
Man, comparing. I really enjoy Joe Rogan, but it's tough for me to see him, maybe because it's so current, to see him on the same tier as a Johnny Carson,
who you have a lot of
so high up there in the history of media. There are very few people who have even sniffed his jock on any level.
Right. So I was just going to say, clearly you have a lot of admiration for Johnny Carson. Can you fill us in on why it is you feel so strongly about him, and what's your first introduction? I mean, I know he was just on, but I'm older than you, and by the time like I was like a kid enough to watch TV, he seemed from the past to me. So I'm curious as to how you developed this admiration for him.
It certainly was not from my childhood. When I was about 8, 9, like he was going off the air, and we had the ascension of Letterman and Leno and that whole battle, and the end of Arsenio. Those were the first late night hosts that I recall. And the beginning of Conan. That's my first late night TV touch in my life. But as you have articulated many times, I am a media nerd. And
you're the king of all media. You're the king of all media studies.
Yes, I am the king of all media studies. I am. Bow before me. And strangely enough, it takes me to another Dave Chappelle thing. And his approach on James Lipton was someone we should have mentioned earlier. And Inside the Actor Studio. But in his initial Inside the Actor Studio appearance, he made several. Chappelle said, the mark of greatness is when everything before you seems obsolete and everything after you bears your mark.
Man, that needs to be chiseled on the granite temples that we leave behind for as artifacts of media in like Greco looking font, right? God damn, that's a fucking quote, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're saying, much as we have discussed, I don't know if we've done this on the show, but where Siskel and Ebert, like everything we like owes a debt to Siskel, which I didn't realize. And then I ran it by you and you were like, oh my God, yes. Like all the sports shit, all of it, even the whole podcast universe is like birthed from Siskel and Ebert, right? You're saying Johnny Carson
is one of those figures.
I mean, he kind of like, if you think about it, he's the progenitor of a type of entertainment culture that we're so awash in, we don't even notice how prevalent it is.
For sure. And even just being in his proximity and being waved over to the desk was a career altering decision that he would make on the fly. Like there's a there's been very, very few people in the history of media that have been able to not only have that power, but wield that power. How did I discover him? It was, first of all, it was how he was talked about. Hearing how Letterman talked about him, how Leno talked about him.
In these reverent tones, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that, oh, what? Like, holy crap. Like, who is this guy? And then there were clips of Donnie, clips. There were DVDs, not DVDs. I think they were tapes at that point. It had to be tapes in the 90s, because I remember watching these infomercials of Johnny Carson, you know, best ofs that were for sale. And I found I just, as a kid at, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, this is how I happened. I watched way too much television. All right. So I was watching countless infomercials, insane amount of TV. So I found myself taken by these bits and just getting a sense of who he was. Then sort of the deeper I waded into TV history and actually watching some of his stand-up and finding it funny. But it was a different tone because it's from a different age, clearly. But it was funny and fascinating, and his interviews were magnificent. He was one of those Bob Costas like figures in that he had every tool in the toolbox. And he could do something serious. He could talk to a philosopher. He talked to propaganda founder Edward Bernays. Like, he'd interview a comedian in Edward Bernays, and on the same show, and then he'd go to a musical act and interview them and be competent and smooth and awesome on many different levels, and a way that very few people have ever touched or considered or would be able to do it. And I can't heap enough praise on him. Like, he is beyond reproach for me. He's outstanding. He's not of my era, clearly, but in the pioneer, in the history of TV, he's certainly one of the 5 to 10 biggest TV stars ever, probably 5.
How do you think?
Cosby.
Okay. How do you think he would work? This is tough. This is like, bringing athletes into different periods and stuff. It's a difficult conversation to have. How do you think his style would translate in today's ecosystem?
I think it would be probably looked at a little bit corny, but I would say that he would probably be able to adapt. Because remember, we're talking a guy who had a show in the 60s, a show in the 70s, a show in the 80s, and was in the early 90s and was able to keep afloat. Even as Arsenio, blew up, he ate into his audience. I think the thing that's very interesting about your question is there's this grand theory of media that I have, and I've several axioms that I believe in strongly. And one is that the speed of our media is a lot faster than the speed of media then, and our appetites for it are a lot faster as well. So he wouldn't have to pivot as much as a Joe Rogan would have to pivot.
What do you mean? In what way would he not?
Joe Rogan has had to evolve faster than in 10 years than Johnny Carson has had to in 30.
Okay.
We expect more from Joe Rogan than we did from Johnny Carson, as strange as that is to say. But that's the nature of our media landscape today.
But you also have I don't want to call it's not quite an ax. Well, I guess it is one of your JB media studies axioms that the faster things or the more things change, the more they go back to the way they were in some sense.
Yeah, and they have.
It's like a train going back to the station, then picking up more baggage of what's happened since then. So in what ways might we be headed back for a return of whatever it was that Johnny Carson, what flavors he brought to the table?
This is an easy one. Have you listened to a podcast recently?
Okay.
I mean, he was the king of long form interviews. The Tonight Show at one point where I believe it was 2 hours. It was an hour, 2 hours or an hour and a half. And it's because he would do a long multi-break interview with a celebrity. It's Bill Simmons talking to Malcolm Gladwell and Eddie Vedder in successive episodes.
There you go.
At a certain point, that seemed very, very novel in the 60s. To go from one, this one athlete to like a more of a theoretical thinker to an author of an interesting book to a comedian, like to have them all in the same space. There was a point where that seemed strange in the 90s and even in the early aughts, I'd say for sure. It seemed a little bit weird. If you look at the lineups of late night talk shows, I was thinking about this. If I did go get a PhD at some point, that was one of my potential studies, is where I would analyze how we have guests on how guests vary in different points of media history. But
well, that would really consecrate your status as a black nerd. You have like serious black nerd accreditation there. Especially that's a really specific.
It is really specific, but I love it.
That's my greeting card for today's audience or whenever you happen to be watching this.
We'll get back there. But yeah, it's one of the things that I am very interested in. And what we saw post Carson was comedy got sort of narrow. And the type of acts that we would have on these shows got narrow. It was the one or two, an actor in a show or two actors in a show. You have a movie out, you have a TV show on, and then you have a musical guest or a comedian to end the show. And it was sort of just this. This was all. Things got so more narrow. And then as Letterman's got older and I think stopped giving a fuck as much, and as things started to change, you started to see sort of this wider variety of guests start to show up again. And Letterman having longer interviews, having a guest on for multiple segments as well. Leno wasn't interested in that. I think it's just not his vibe. I mean, I think he saw it as a job instead of an art. I think that's part of the way that Leno gets knocked. He's a technician, he doesn't see it even in his comedy. There's a reason why he doesn't have a comedy special. It's because he wants to use the same parts over and over again as long as he wants. And he feels like with a comedy special, he has to dead that stuff. He's like, why would I dead that stuff? I make all kinds of money off this stuff. Why would I want to? If a joke works for 10 years, I should be able to tell it for 10 years. And as more people moved into this space, as you had your Jon Stewarts of the world rise, as Conan started to take this part more serious. Craig Ferguson is highly underrated. He actually I think is his style was actually more Carson-esque in that he would be able to have a a long form funny conversation with a very serious person or just flirting with a hot star of a movie.
Right,
You know,
right.
like and it would work. It'd be funny. It'd be interesting. And at the same time, we had the birth of podcasts in the host guest syndrome of podcasts. It could be a lot more things. It often is a lot more things, but the bulk of podcasts are a host and a guest, and and it's one interviewing the other.
Well, but in a
And,
sense, oh, sorry.
and that's I think that's one of the direct connects to Carson. He was by no means the only person to do it, but he was certainly the high watermark
Hmm.
or one
So,
of
in a
them.
sense, Joe Rogan is sort of, or Carson is sort of Joe Rogan's daddy in a way. No,
Yes, in terms of his impact, especially Carson was seen by such a he was so revered and seen by such a large amount of Americans, and the people who watched him. They were enraptured by him in a way that we've only really seen with a couple other audiences. We brought up Oprah earlier. I would throw her in this cohort as well, where Oprah could sell to her audience. I don't think Jerry Springer could really sell to his audience. You know what I
hmm,
mean? Oprah could sell. Maury Povich can't sell to his audience. They were
hmm,
all about the Oprah experience. They wanted the Oprah magazine. They wanted to read the books that she was reading. They wanted to be like Oprah. Oprah was their friend, and they wanted to be within the Oprah ecosystem. They wanted to share the experiences that Oprah had. It wasn't really like that. It with a Springer or a Maury or even a Ricky Lake. You wanted to. You're kind of looking at, oh, that's interesting. That's candy. Oprah was more like, oh, I want this in my life all the time. Um, I don't want to just gawk at her. I want to be her to be a part of my life. And Rogan has sort of slid into that kind of role where if you're on and Howard Stern was this on the radio, his terrestrial radio show was this for many acts where it was like coming on that show made them a giant star outside that realm. What's happened on Rogan is many acts going on that show, venturing into that world, and in the according to Spotify, between 10 and 20 million listeners per episode. Listening to those people, being in those person's ear, it 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 rises you up a level for at least a time,
hmm.
and and you feel it, and you feel it like you don't feel anything else. Going on the news, going on Letterman, going on Fallon right now, going on on Kimmel, going on Colbert does not have the effect it on the rest of your career. It's a nice to have. Going on Rogan, there's countless people who are like, boy, this was transformational.
Right. It's more of a cultural force and kingmaker kind of a thing. Even if the numbers would happen to be higher on a TV broadcast, the impact of being on Rogan, you're saying, is going to be deeper for whoever the guest is.
Hmm.
You were talking about Oprah and her audience wanting the whole experience, wanting to patronize people. Like, so if
Hmm.
she had an author or whatever, it was like selling that author's whole, not just their career, but but christening that author's brand out of Oprah's own personal cart at the flea market, kind of like, okay, I'm giving this my blessing to all the people who come to my stand.
Oh yeah.
And it's like the opposite of is like pre-internet stands, but with a positive effect instead of the kind of stands that swarm on people to attack people who speak against the object of their adulation. I'm sure those people, if Oprah had existed in the internet age, they'd be doing the same thing. They'd be attacking people who didn't like Oprah, but it's just an interesting effect. It's like more positive, at least looks that way. It's more about wanting to spread the wealth, I guess, so to speak, or have your audience partake in something every time you have a new person on. That's kind of an interesting thing because like not everybody has the power or the desire, the reach, the kind of reach, or even the desire to do that.
Or the kind of product. Okay, so either to go deeper into my black nerd overload. For a
Overlord.
second, I won't go too deep here.
Black Lord Overlord. Is what that's black nerd overlord. Yeah. But James is like Dumbledore of the Black Hogwarts. Black nerd James is like Dumbledore of the Black Nerd Hogwarts. That's your like aspiration for media obsessed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. All right. While I get that vision of myself in the Dumbledore hat out of my head. By the way, not a Harry Potter fan. So the formula for creating most popular shows on the internet these days is to go narrow and deep. You have a very specific focus and you go deep.
Right.
And the people go ahead.
Well, so super fans
yes,
who want to get into autistic level detail about a certain topic.
It's the Kevin Kelly 1,000 true fans theory. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
You've talked to me about this before. I don't know if the audience is, but you've talked to me about this.
The audience, I'll explain this really quickly to you. Well, he was one of the founders, I believe, of Wired, and he wrote this essay that if you can develop 1,000 true fans, and when I say true fans, people who will pay for everything that you develop, they are nuts about you. They respect your knowledge. They will pump you up to their friends and their acquaintances. They are all about you. That you can build a fortune off just 1,000 people who will rock with you. Believe it or not, whatever. But that's the backbone ideology of how most shows gain traction. You develop that sort of hardcore fandom, people who are really into you, those super fans, you super serve them, and they become your ambassadors. And over time, you branch out and grow and grow and grow, like you proposed with Shannon Sharpe, like we've seen with Joe Rogan over the last decade. But when you do that, when you narrow in your audience like that, it's exclusionary, and purposely so. It's this I believe it was one of the original MTV execs said this, that they on purpose tried to make MTV unwatchable for people over 30. They didn't want people over 30 watching them. So they wanted to make it feel like, oh, you are invading into, enemy territory. And at the same time, making it unwatchable for people over 30 made kids think, holy shit, I want to be a part of this.
Piss off my parents. Yeah.
That's the whole logic behind most internet audience building. Whether it's a blog, social media site, whether it's your profile, podcast, whatever. When you do that, having such a narrow audience, you end up in this audience capture where you are just feeding them and you're trying to give them what they want so that they stay, because you only have so few of them, and you don't want to lose your grip on that small cohort. So usually, and this gets back to Shannon, you look at your episodes and you're like, oh, this got 2 million, this got 3 million, this got, this got 900,000, this got 1 million. I got to keep giving them what they want. But over time, if you truly want to get huge, you have to go gen pop. You have to pivot to the center, like they say in elections. And once you get through the primary, and you want to win the general election, you gotta move to the center, because in order to get a wider audience, you have to be accessible to more people. And that's what you see over time with interviewers. We've seen this with Charlemagne the God. That's another one, perfect example, where Charlemagne has, I think, purposely trying to like, hey, I want to increase my profile. I want to become a bigger star. So you know what? I'm not going to sniff the seat of the hot girl that comes in the studio anymore. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to talk about mental health. And I'm going to be vulnerable. And I'm going to be more political. Yes, I'm going to have some Charlemagne touches. I want to make sure that people still feel that I'm Charlemagne, but I'm going to dull my edges so that those people who I pissed off or who look at me like, oh, I can't listen to that show, I can't watch that show, they're more attracted to me over time.
Right, but don't you risk losing the people who you won? But then I guess the gamble is you get so many more in return that at that point you can jettison the 1,000 loyalists.
Yes.
Who are going to be done with you anyway by that point.
They're going to move on to the next cool thing. Yeah. And you become gen pop. You'll keep some of them, but you've become gen pop.
Interesting. Right. I mean, in his case, I don't think it comes off as contrived. I think there is a wisdom to him or a receptiveness to a kind of modern sort of emotive, empathetic, pop psych kind of rhetoric that I think he carries rather well, and a kind of self-help and a kind of striving to better oneself. At least he presents that in a way that I think is not ill-suited for him. Let's put it that way. I think it suits him. But that's just my
yeah. I think it's fine. I think it's fine for him. But I think the larger point is that as you have more people trying to go through this process, the reward system for going through the process is not as strong. So you don't end up with people developing into that next generation of Johnny Carson, of Oprah Winfrey, of even Howard Stern to a degree, because losing that core group becomes scary. The rewards aren't as strong. You can make a strong living just with that core crew. Sometimes a better living with that core crew and not be as famous. So you don't get fully minted, well-rounded hosts anymore. I think you get fewer and fewer over time. because the way the system is built, the incentives point us away from being a well-rounded figure.
Why would you potentially make a better living with a smaller, more loyalist crew of followers and supporters than you would if you went, as you put it, Gen Pop?
Depends on what kind of life you want to live.
So if you're saying if your success level goes up, then your expenses may go up because you may embrace, or you're more likely to embrace, some of the trappings that come with that success. So the formula of what you're spending, not necessarily that you're living beyond your means, but you may be living richer than you were before and spending more of what you were making. Is that what you're?
Not what I was saying, but I agree with that. That certainly
Okay.
happened, and it's certainly from what we've learned about Drake, and which we'll get into. That certainly seems to have happened to him.
But what were you saying?
But what I was saying is that one of the guys that I have frequently compared you to is Chuck Klosterman.
Mm-hmm.
And you could argue that he, at least from my perspective, he's almost got the most perfect kind of fame. He poops out a book. People care.
Mm-hmm.
It does well. Then he goes away. Works on the next thing. Puts out a thing. His fans, his super fans, people like myself, really into it, really pumped to see what weird thing has Chuck Klosterman cooked up. And then he goes away. He can have a life. He can be he doesn't have to he doesn't get mobbed when he goes to the mall. You know, he can be in Portland with his kids, and yes, I'll get recognized. People shake his hands. People want to talk to him, but it's not gonna. He doesn't have to be a star.
He's not smothered by celebrity.
Yes. Most people who get his level of fame or higher, they're dealing with a higher level of celebrity, and they're aspiring to that level of celebrity.
Right. And they assume, or the assumption is, you want to keep striving. You want to keep growing. And so, yeah, so people like that have it figured out. Not to subvert your point, but
No,
I must share with you my sub headline for that Bill Simmons piece is, and I'd rather inhale the same rhino diarrhea through a crazy straw than watch Chuck Klosterman opine on O.J. Simpson, parentheses, a Pearl Jam appreciation post. So.
Are you kidding me? You had Chuck in the subhead?
Yeah, because he and Bill.
Yeah.
So he wrote for both Grantland and The Ringer. I don't remember if he wrote for The Ringer, but I know he wrote for Grantland. And I remember a specific conversation in 2014, or whenever that Malaysian plane flight disappeared.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling Bill Simmons, so I'm, sitting around doing what culture critics do, trying to figure out what I can say. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but what angle to take on a current event. And I thought, well, that's my issue with what you do. Because it's always looking to contrive an angle rather than just processing. Now, look, again, as you so perfectly laid out, he has the ideal success, the ideal life in terms of his success, his career. We would all kill to have what he has without the more destabilizing effects of lots of fame and money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I have never been a fan. I'm very, very tickled that you always compare. You think that you said my stuff reminds you of him, because it either means that I'm projecting onto him everything that I'm too blind to see that I am, right? That actually I am exactly, I am the things that irritate me about him and just can't see it or can't face it, or that people aren't going to, there is a distinction, but people aren't going to make that distinction anyway. Either one of which is fucking hilarious to me. Like if either one of those is true. And and I could see people chiming in, well, you're not nearly as accomplished, blah blah blah, and right. That's why I'm reluctant to talk about figures like this. But that's why I associate him with Bill Simmons, because of that conversation, and because Bill Simmons had him on Grantland, and his analysis of I've heard a quote of him recently talking about Taylor Swift, or someone quoted him. Actually, Ethan Strauss quoted him, and yes, he's a highly analytical guy, which I of course value, but it's always trying to find a way towards a subject that you can then commodify the angle on the subject rather than the fucking subject itself. And that kind of drives me crazy. It's like profoundly uncomfortable for me to come across any of his stuff. Now, to be fair to him, in another life, that dude would have been one of the great sports writers of all time.
You think he picked the wrong specialty?
If gauging by his life, no, he didn't. He picked exactly what I know. Lots of people who love him. I didn't realize you were as much of a fan as you are. Mm-hmm. It's basically assumed that if you care for music, culture, entertainment, and that if you're somebody who does what I do, that you're going to automatically go, oh, I think Chuck Klosterman is great. I know lots of people who absolutely eat it up. So how can I say that he chose the wrong thing? I guess I wish he would have done more of the sports writing thing. There's a piece he wrote for Grantland about I don't even know if it was a Division III. It might have even been lower than Division III basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the piece I'm talking about? Where it was like a Native American school.
Yeah.
With fewer than the required number of players on the court. And I thought, holy shit, this is what I would fucking love this guy to be doing. It was like two different voices, right? Like I really do not like I cannot get even 2 pages into one of his books without like wanting to throw it. I just cannot deal with it, right? It does not go into my system at all. Like, in my taste buds are like, no. I read this and I thought it was really beautiful and just superbly written. It was like a sublime piece of writing. And I was like, I like that Bill Simmons gave him that platform, but I'm just like, dude, why didn't you do this more? And I'm kind of being tongue in cheek because I actually did watch that OJ clip, and that's more of what I would want from him. Because what he said about OJ was dead fucking true and really, really interesting. It's got this sort of, even Ethan Strauss was making fun of him, like, the way he talks about football in this way that's like, in this like high pitched voice and stuff. But I mean, when he talks about sports, I don't hear that I'm on the make for a way to give you this take that's going to have some real flavor on it. It's just like, oh, this is what happened in this sport, and that's pretty fucking fascinating on its own. It doesn't need the extra sauce.
Could I posit a possibility for you?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
That you don't get that version of Klosterman without the version that you hate.
Why is that?
Because and I feel this about my work as well, is that whether it's covering local news or spending gobs of time in marketing in other realms, that those things help shape the way I approach stuff now. It's all that time I spent watching way too much TV and obsessing about TV ratings and watching every pilot on television, and that shape the way that I think and move now. And I can, and so when I apply that to whatever, whatever new thing, those things all sort of leak onto that thing.
I mean, certainly, I'm sure that's the case. I feel like those two gears in his expression. I mean, they obviously stem from the same source. It's the same brain, same person, right? But same experience. But it's like hearing somebody play two different instruments. It's like Phil Collins singing, right? That has its audience, and I'm not even going to diss that. But like Phil Collins doing pop, I want to hear. And there's some of that stuff I love, but I want to hear Phil Collins playing drums in like 9/8 time, and I want to hear. That's just what I happen to like more of, or even playing in Brand X, which is like even lesser known than early Genesis is known, right? Klosterman, it's like where's the sports writer? Why didn't he put more books out on that? I feel like he could have sold them.
Yeah, but maybe his heart was into that stuff. Maybe his heart was into writing about the 90s or sex, drugs, and Cocoa Puffs.
I have that book downstairs, and I'm gonna to put
As
myself
do I.
through
I have it
purgatory.
behind
I'm
me.
gonna force myself to try to read it.
I have it behind here somewhere
Hmm.
in my mountain of books over there. Yeah, but yeah, like I think I get your point, but I think that there is sort of I think at a certain point you're going to do what you're going to do. Like you need to, you're serving something inside yourself when you decide to dig in on something. And I think his was more the pop culture stuff that you love.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if he looks at sports as kind of like the thing he does just for fun, as like a diversion.
I think absolutely he does. I mean, if you listen to him on Bill Simmons' podcast, the way he talks about sports, it's fun.
Well, and again, so in spite of the spicy title and the fact that I'm really not a fan, it's like I see a writer in there whose stuff I would have loved, and in fact have loved. I mean, that for all the people in the audience, and I would recommend you read that piece again.
Okay.
It's really artful.
Okay, cool. Shall we move on to
Speaking of artful, the Shaq disc or the we already talked about the of course.
I will let me set this one up, because this we need to give it its due.
Euphoria.
Ladies and gentlemen,
them superpowers get neutralized. I can only watch in silence. The famous actor we once knew is looking paranoid and now spiraling. You're moving just like a degenerate. Every antic is feeling distasteful. Why calculate you not as calculated? I can even predict your angles. Fabricating stories on the family front, cause you heard
overanalyzed pieces of music I've ever heard.
I can smell the tails on you now. You're not a rap artist, you're a scam artist with the hopes of being accepted. Tommy Hilfiger stood out, but FUBU never had been your collection. I make music that electrify.
One of the barbs used to
that pacify. I can double down
try to destroy the career of another millionaire.
Random acts of kindness. Know you're a master manipulator and habitual liar too. But don't tell no lie about me, and I won't tell truths about you.
So if you're alive today, you've probably been hearing about Kendrick Lamar and Drake. These two guys were once friends, we believe, about a decade ago. And a decade ago, they went on tour. And then something happened, and they started hating each other. And in the hip-hop universe, there's been this undercurrent among fandom that Kendrick and Drake hate each other. The first I heard about it was like in, I want to say 2015, 2016. Oh, these people really don't like each other, and they keep sneak dissing each other over and over and over again. They talk about each other, but they won't directly address each other. Take shot after shot after shot after shot. Until finally, nearly a decade later, a couple months ago, Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole declared themselves two of the greatest of all time. Then Kendrick says, nah, fuck the big three. I'm just big me. Then Drake takes shots at Kendrick. Then Kendrick lost his goddamn mind. He accused Drake of being a pedophile.
Did he use that word?
Well, he said he liked them young. And also, you know, Drake had an album called Certified Lover Boy.
Mm-hmm.
He used the phrase certified pedophile
In
one of his diss tracks.
Right. Kendrick did, you're saying.
Kendrick did. Kendrick not only did that, Drake, who famously in a different rap beat, it was revealed that he was hiding a child that he was going to roll out with a clothing line in his new album. By the way, what the Father of the Year stuff right there. I'm gonna roll out my hidden child with my clothing line in my new album.
Hidden from who? Did the kid know Drake was?
Yes.
Okay.
That one did. Kendrick claims that there's a second child, an older child. He also that Drake has been hiding, and that there might be other. He alludes to numerous ones. We know that Drake has a reputation of
sliding
being with a lot of women.
DMs. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. On top of that, Drake has fake abs, according to Kendrick Lamar. That he's obsessed with Brazilian butt lifts. He has got a Percocet problem. He's got money problems, spending problems. And in the world in the rap world hates him.
Okay, so I have a question here.
Yeah.
This is a little bit trifling. Like, am I going to get us myself or killed here by suggesting maybe one of these dudes wants to suck the other one's dick? Because that's a hell of a lot of focus to be having on somebody over a 10-year period over some slight.
They hate each other.
I know, but to be all up in somebody's business like that, like why do you fucking care what somebody's done with their dick? Like, I mean, I know Kendrick probably knows people and is friends with people who don't get Father of the Year awards and who've left a trail of kids from different baby mamas. There's a bunch of athletes that have that. Why do you give a fuck so much?
Well, why did Drake? I didn't get into any of the Drake accusations. Drake has been doing most of the sneak dissing over the years, and in this beef, he accused Kendrick of beating his wife, and he also He also claimed that his manager is the father of his children.
I mean,
You say stuff like that. You say stuff like that. I'm gonna come at you.
sure, of course. But that I can see a little bit more, right? But like he's not good with his money. Like like this sounds like female gossip to me on both sides.
Yeah, fair.
Sounds like
By the way,
women
Ace,
in hair
Ace,
curlers.
I feel good. I do feel good, Ace. Thank you. Thank you. I am James Brown, and I feel good. Thank you. Go on.
So I mean, this sounds like a bunch of women sitting around getting all up in each other's shit.
Yeah,
Like I don't see what this is interesting at all, but
I find it fascinating. These two, you have two millionaires trying to destroy each other. I find that fascinating.
Not only millionaires, hundreds millionaires.
Probably, I would think that Kendrick's probably in that range now. Probably, and Drake definitely is. And the fact that Drake is also, it's not just a millionaire, just not hundreds of millionaires. Drake is one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
Yeah, God help us, but yeah.
I mean, it's kind of him and Taylor
God
Swift.
help us there too.
And I mean, I kind of put Beyonce in kind of like she's in another realm, kind of in the she's graduated from this conversation, but in terms of like active pop stars, it's really him and Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anyone else who would fit into that category. So it's not just the fact that it's the barbs going back and forth, getting a lot of music from a guy like Kendrick who doesn't put out a lot of music. Kendrick hasn't put out an album in years. And then all of a sudden he comes with a barrage of music that was very, very fun as a fan. But like the fact that these two would go so far to try to destroy each other, so far create album art like this.
Right.
Where you get looks like a Google aerial view of Drake's mansion and put a bunch of sex offender dots on top of his roof.
That is
you don't get this in any other type of encounter in the media culture realm other than hip hop.
Well, you wouldn't have. Would you have even? I mean, going all the way? I know you wanted to talk about the history of the diss track.
Yeah.
Would it? I mean, I don't know if anybody went this far. Did they?
Well, I think of the condom in a used condom in a baby car seat. Comes to mind from the 90s.
But that's not even close to this.
I mean, this is it's part of what was great about it. It was so mean. It was so mean.
Or used condom in a baby's car seat. Was that supposed to say that the person did something with a baby? No, right?
No.
No, yeah. So okay. This feels like it's on a higher level of, or more extreme level of venom and wanting to. You're saying destroy each other. I don't think these guys could destroy each other's careers. They're too big. But
probably not.
Destroy reputation. Yes, which is what makes this seem like two women.
Fair. I think the interesting element that's something I've thought about a little bit too, and about whether these two could actually destroy each other. Well, I think there are certainly fans who would hear the allegations, whether it's the spouse abuse or the child stuff, or the like at least young stuff, or you're at least paying somebody who has these accusations on your payroll, stuff like that. They'd be repelled from it.
Sure. And the media would run with it.
Yeah, but when it comes to actually the type of person who will pay attention to it, it's someone like me. And as your meme here says, black nerds rule the world. The the depth of the black nerdery in the hip hop fan community, which these guys both deeply care about and care about cultivating. We would care a lot, and some of this stuff Drake will never escape. Some of the stuff Kendrick probably will never escape, even though most people have concluded that Kendrick has won this round.
What do you mean that never escape? That these hushed, unproven allegations will always haunt or trail their image?
Yeah, like these are, when these incidents happen, they reach mythical status. They just stick to your career, and who won and who lost, who how you approached it. It's like it's talked about the way that war is talked about. It's talked about the way that a fantastic back and forth football game, the chess match of it all, in winning and being atop the it all is so, it sticks to you, and the allegations thrown out stick to you as well. I don't think it sticks to especially a guy like Drake's entire career, because aside from being just a hip hop star, he is a pop star. He is a reggaeton kind of guy as well, and he's in this sort of weird Caribbean music sphere. He's so much more than just a hip hop guy, that even if his hip hop angle kind of like fizzles, I think he can withstand losing this war. A guy like Kendrick could not. That's why he had to go nuclear.
But these are serious. I mean, Kendrick is basically saying
yes
that Drake is approaching a P. Diddy type.
Yes.
figure.
Yes. In fact, P. Diddy was mentioned in one of the tracks.
Or R. Kelly. P.
Yeah,
Diddy.
I believe he was. I believe R. Kelly was mentioned as well.
So
yeah,
I'm more curious about where this comes from and why
Mhm.
these guys are so focused on airing each other's dirty laundry. And again, it seems like they've both harbored this grudge for a long time. When you do that, you're thinking about the other person. They're in your head.
Everything you say about me is true.
The proverbial living in your head rent free. They're living in each other's heads rent free. And that's why I think there's a homoerotic
and I think it's
aspect to this.
You're the first person that I've heard come at it from that angle. This is why I think you're a lot like Klosterman.
Well, thanks, I guess. I mean, so you go as far as to say they are black nerds. I'm curious about that too, because you're saying they're interested in cultivating black nerds as a following.
Oh yeah.
When I sent you that title card, "Black Nerds Rule the World," you said, "Well, they certainly did this week. 2 of them did anyway."
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Because I don't associate them with as black nerds.
Have you been paying attention to popular culture this week?
Well, I mean, no.
Okay, let me elaborate. One of these records, Not Like Us, Kendrick's his final blow to well, not his final blow, but probably his most popular blow. It's now the number one song in America.
Mm-hmm.
A diss track. Became the number one song in America. That speaks to how weird our charting system is at this point.
Right, because I
But
mean that doesn't quite carry as much as it once did. Because I think Taylor Swift has 18 songs. Ethan Strauss was saying,
yeah, it's
something
all
like that in the top.
it's all messed up. But number one song in America, trending everywhere. It's become walk-up music for major leaguers. People, it's been aired on NBA games on ESPN and TNT.
Yeah, it's
Like
interesting.
it's become it's become conversation all over the place, all the time, everywhere.
Let's look up to see if the New Yorker and the New York fucking Times have talked about it. I bet you they've dispatched some fucking like somebody in their whole factory to go out and.
Interesting question.
I'll look it up while you're talking, but I mean,
but before we look it up, and look it up. By the way, can you share on your side? Your screen?
I don't know,
but
I can always send you the link. I'm not sure. I think I can,
okay.
but
yeah, like that would be an interesting thing. I'm pretty sure that the New York Times would have written something about this. This was
they absolutely have.
Yeah, this was massive. It was everywhere, and you had this underground culture of, and I can find the video. I had it on a sheet here, where essentially you had black nerds reacting to this became the thing to do on across the podcast world, across the YouTube world, and it permeated out into this sort of wider cultural realm in a way that could only happen in this era. When Ja Rule and company were fighting back in the day, when 50 Cent had beefs back in the day, when Jay-Z and Nas were fighting back in the day, it couldn't get out. It was sort of captured by this sort of hip-hop world. But since the hip-hop world and country world and politics world and all these worlds are all on top of each other all the time, when something like this happens in hip-hop land, it could just permeate out into the wider culture in a way that it couldn't at any other point in history because of the nature of the mediums involved. It's YouTube, it's social media, it's the DSPs, Spotify, Apple Music, all that. And it's been a remarkable moment that is honestly one of the rarest ones I've seen in history.
But not for nothing, why would black nerds be important in driving it to the wider culture when they're such a small part of?
Because black nerds are influential.
Here comes the black nerd overlord to tell us, you dare question my relevance? I'll show you.
Yeah, it's not just influential, because there's a lot of influential groups, right? The group that keeps Taylor Swift in the news is influential as well, and there's, at this point in the terms of culture, subgroup is everything. It's like I was talking about earlier about, cultivating a subgroup and growing that subgroup and using that subgroup to grow your larger fame. How I think what happened is that black nerds and hip hop nerds, they're not exactly the same, but they overlap. We were all taken by this, and we took this out and we pollinated the rest of the universe.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I know my guy FD Signifier is all up
Who
on
if
this.
I'm the black nerd overlord, I mean, what is he? Black nerd god?
It's like the
Is
DC
he
and Marvel
Simmons?
universe. You guys have to fight each other.
Oh, I'd love to. FD. Bring it on. Bring it on, FD.
Well,
I'll
I
take it
mean,
on, FD.
we don't need to present it quite like that. I mean, maybe just have you guys talking. It would be like that'd be a hell of a podcast graphic novel. You and FD taking each other on. FD's killing it.
Yeah, he is. He's on another,
Fantano is yes.
he's on another level. Fuck.
Fantano is on it.
Sure.
The New York Times, when I did a Google search, there are four, count them, 4 posts over the last, 3 of them are from 3 days ago and one of them's from 8 hours ago. The New Yorker, of course, Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and our moment of bad reading. Of course, that's a very New Yorker headline. So they've got these like Renfield, like, yes, I must go talk about urban culture.
Yeah, yeah. I bet NPR's on it as well.
I'm sure they are. But I mean, the thing with the walk up and the NBA and TNT and stuff, I mean, with lyrics like this, that is quite a saturation point where, dude is basically saying you're, like I said, P. Diddy or R. Kelly, and how do you come back from that?
Mm-hmm.
Other than to shut your mouth?
Yeah, it's a big one. And among the rumors out there is that Universal Music Group is they both are affiliated with Universal Music Group in different ways. And that they have but Universal has a bigger investment in Drake because Drake has a 360 deal. Are you familiar with the term? Right?
Yes.
To our listeners, a 360 deal is essentially an artist gets a lump sum of money, in this case $400 million, for Universal to get a chunk, an extremely large chunk of everything they do, from touring,
all their revenue streams. Yes,
merch,
that's why it's called 360. Yeah.
Music,
sales, streams, all that's licensing, all that stuff,
and basically any visual content he puts out as well. So it's probably I don't know for sure that it stretches into his, because Euphoria is a show that Drake produces.
Okay.
So they may get a chunk of that money from HBO as well. So like they have all that from Drake. Kendrick doesn't have that kind of deal. He has more of a traditional record deal. But they're both under the umbrella of Universal. There's been a lot of talk of Universal holding several meetings trying to mediate these two and get Kendrick's side to say this was not real. And what's been the noise on the digital streets is that Kendrick has said no.
Well, he better be careful, because if he's painting Drake to be Diddy, then they might do Kendrick like the rumors are that Michael Jackson got offed for running afoul of music industry, that wanted its hand in his all had the rights that he had. That's the rumor. It's an easy rumor, but it's also not implausible. I mean, if you're Angela Lansbury, you don't have to be fucking Angela Lansbury to like attribute motive there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's fucking with,
and he certainly
a large chunk. That's fucking with a large chunk of somebody else's money, and he could get really fucked up over something like this, because what they might do, instead of like outright killing him, is find a way to smear him somehow. But my question, I would have assumed, well, they would have been great with all of it because it's driving sales of both. Would have been my question, or my assumption.
Yeah, Kendrick's back catalog is up massively. I saw something like 40%. But Drake's is actually down.
Oh, so you're saying this could
affect him in the long run. I mean, it is just 1 week. of this going chaos. So it could rebound next week. Who knows?
But I don't see how you can have a comeback that is as forceful and hits the other guy as hard as you just been hit. I mean, it like the things Kendrick is saying sound like a knockout blow to me. The only thing that would you can still hear me, right? Oh, the only thing that would, I think, be as big of a bomb. Maybe I'll wait for you to come back. Okay. The only thing that would be as big of a bomb is if Drake just came out and said what I said. Dude tried to suck my dick on that tour. That's why I don't like him. And then that would eclipse. Doesn't have to be true. All he has to do is allege that he's gay.
Yeah. But
that's his only play here.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite YouTube comments was, damn, after that, he's just gonna have to box him. Like how do you come out back from it at all? Like, it's got to get physical. And one of Drake's bodyguards got shot outside his house also this week.
Right.
And the question is, was this involved? I don't know. It seems very unclear. I think it's probably unlikely.
Do you think why? Why do you think? Oh, we need the drop. We need the drop.
Shit ain't cool.
No, why?
Why would you think that? Why would you think that? Why would you think that?
Well, Jason, I don't believe. Well, if you're Kendrick, why would you do that? You're winning. You won the Black Nerd
because these things have escalated into violence.
You won the charts.
Okay. Hold on.
Yeah.
You are a highly rational thinker. Right? You cannot always go through the world.
Why would you think that?
Thank you. Assuming that people are rational. And these things have been known to escalate into violence before. In fact, many times they have, resulting in actual death.
Famously, it's widely believed that that's the Tupac Biggie scenario, right?
Right. At least that's the way. That's the first thing we would think based on the tenor of their the way they addressed each other in their diss tracks, right? So, is it on? I mean, we can't assume it's related, but just because I'm winning, like this is hip hop is still steeped in this mentality that you have to prove a fucking point. And you have to be I don't even know you have to be the top dog. And if somebody disrespects you, you've got to come back at them. Now, you're right. What would have been more plausible by that mentality is Drake, one of Kendrick's people being shot because Drake felt slighted or his ego was bruised by what happened by Kendrick's diss. So, I don't know. That's where this gets into fucked up territory because, I mean, when this spills over, it's just fucking gross, nihilistic bullshit. And I understand why
you think that.
I understand why you think it's fascinating as a entertainment story or as a pop culture story. I mean, if these guys just went back at each other and there was no threat of actual violence, then have at it, right? But it's uncomfortable because you don't know what somebody in somebody's crew is going to do to somebody else or what else this might spill over into. And is there possible legal repercussions from some of these
allegations?
Yeah. I'm sure Kendrick's lawyers
probably you could. I mean, I don't think Drake would. I would be. Man, that would look worse.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, like if you are Drake, and the man
God forbid, but
who beats you in a battle, and then you sue
right, it's like calling
for
your
the
mom
allegations in a
after.
rap battle.
Yeah, it's like calling the kid's mom after.
You know,
Okay, but I mean, but
even if
those are, but that's more than just. But the allegations are more than just typical rap battle fare.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
that's
definitely
serious
taking
shit
it.
he's throwing around.
Yeah, you know, certainly it's serious shit, but like it's hard for me to see, you know, like I don't think it would happen.
What if Universal gets their lawyers?
That would be interesting. Universal would be attacking another one of their biggest artists.
Sure, but I mean, the damage is already done on Drake, and this track did well. They've already made their money off of this track, so and it's gonna fizzle, right? I mean, I don't think this is gonna. I don't think Kendrick's track is gonna continue making them money that much over time. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe from the because I think it's gonna fade, is what I'm saying,
Oh, probably. I
right? From
mean,
the moment.
it's uh, I think that music seems to be fading quicker in this era anyway.
Sure.
And I could see a scenario where the diss tracks sort of just fade into the background. It's no longer a big deal. Sure, you know, as we move on to other things. But I don't think Universal would do that as well, because I think they would open. I think Drake would be open. I mean, if you're Kendrick, why don't you sue back? And I don't think Drake wants that, especially if he's like Drake denied that he had the child. There's also pictures, and you never know in this era, but there's pictures circulating of Drake's child and Drake with him, um, with her. There's there's levels and levels and levels and levels I could go into, but I will not. But
Okay.
like you'd be opening yourself up to countersuing. You also be opening yourself up to discovery,
Right. And what else
and
would
nobody wants
surface?
that. Nobody wants that on either side, I don't think. Especially if this is patty cake and both of you are lying about everything, nobody wants that to be proven in public.
Right. Well,
Um,
nobody wants it if it's true or or a
yeah,
lie.
that's
Right.
why I just don't think you get them involved. Now there is someone who posted online, who um Drake in his music, and one of his DJ academics, one of his you know, his lackeys online,
Uh-huh.
who was having such a great time, um, have said that was lying, that Kendrick was lying about certain things this person actually provided them with this information of, has now threatened to sue them for calling her a liar and about this information. Um, but
This
I
person
don't think. Go ahead.
this person threatened to sue DJ
Ack and
Academics.
Ack and Drake.
Oh, okay. So where does that go?
And I think it's going to happen. I don't think that that's gonna like I think I'm gonna try to find this real quick, but I think that, oh yeah, I got it. Okay. Just to add a little context, one of the pieces of album art was Drake's father's one of Drake's father's shirts, along with Percocets, pill bottles with Drake's name on it, and Drake's father's name on it. That this person claims to have discarded at Drake's behest. Drake apparently, according to this person, Drake has had lots of drugs and other paraphernalia discarded over the years.
Who knows? Maybe
by
even
lackeys.
aborted children.
Quite possibly. I mean, like he's, but I mean, look, from what we know from that, I mean, on the children thing, I mean, what we know from his son Adonis, that he knocked up an internet, an IG model, quote unquote, you know, an OnlyFans star. And then he sent a team to her house to clean up her Instagram and her persona and get her new clothes and mop her up, all ahead of this line that he was going to roll out that was going to bear his son's name. He didn't deny it. In fact, he kind of confirmed it in record form.
But so this person, who's we should call a Drake whistleblower, a former Drake lackey entourage whistleblower, took that to Kendrick and is now saying, "No, I'm not lying. I'll sue. I'll sue you and academics."
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, where does this go? Because I find this to be all rather grotesque.
I don't think it goes. I mean, look, I think this peters out and we move on.
Okay, so you're just having fun with it while it lasts.
Yeah. I don't think this goes anywhere super serious. I mean, it's kind of like, I know we were talking about the other beef we were about to discuss, Shannon and Shaq. And I think it's similar in that it's not going to go anywhere serious, but like you got dudes that are going to talk shit about each other forever. It's another reason why I don't believe that Drake was going to, or Kendrick were gonna do anything serious in terms of you know, violence or a lawsuit. I just don't buy it.
Well, I want to dwell on this for a little bit because you mentioned you wanted to talk about the history of the diss track, which,
sure, go for it.
You go back to early hip hop, and I actually remember one of the earliest ones, the Boogie Down Productions, MC Shan bridge, the bridge is over, MC Shan and Marley Marl saying that rap started in Queensbridge, and of course, you know, the Bronx is the birthplace of hip hop, and you know, there's a lot of pride around that. And I mean,
sure,
from what I understand it, at that early stage, I mean, this is like the early 80s. So, I mean, hip hop had to have been spreading, but New York was still the epicenter. And like, even like there was as much animosity and rivalry between the boroughs as there would have been later between, like, you know, East Coast and West Coast. Like another borough might as well have been a different part of the country in terms of this, right? Just to put that in context. And, you know, I think there's two different things we're talking about here. One of them is like a tradition of like trash talking and bragging, and you know, you see that in athletics. Obviously, Muhammad Ali, I think, did that, you know, in a way that I really look up to. But then there's this undercurrent of people getting shot or potentially getting shot, and then the whole gang thing. And I just find it so nihilistic and fucked up that we're celebrating that side of it. And the disregard for Black life from people who claim to love everything blackness. And I was talking to you before about podcast beefs, and you laughed and like, oh, nothing. But I mean, when Matt Barnes got on Dan Asskisser Lebitard's show, who never met a street black person whose ass he didn't want to, fucking suck on air, Dan Lebitard. And Matt Barnes is like,
wow,
smirking and laughing as, oh, well,
speaking of podcast,
Shannon Sharpe. Well, you have to be big enough for people to care. I'm just taking it for granted that we're flying under the radar. So, and like when I tweet shit to people, nobody cares. Although somebody from the Dan Lebitard show DM'd me, and I still can't figure out who the fuck it is. I should have screenshot that, but I was like, who are you? And why are you DMing me on at midnight on a Friday night? Don't you have? It was clearly somebody who was just like bored as shit. But like Matt Barnes got on there because Shannon Sharpe said, when I see you, Mike Epps, at the NBA All-Star game, I'm going to pull up on you. And of course, Mike Epps said, I don't fight. Like, which the implication was, I got my boys with me, you'll get your ass shot. And I saw Matt Barnes get on Dan Lebitard's show and like smirk about that and kind of fan the flames. And what I would love to say to somebody like Matt Barnes is like, look, why are you glorifying the possibility that a comedian, somebody in a comedian's posse in his hometown of Indianapolis, because he has to fucking save face against an athlete who said something about him on a podcast that potentially could escalate to violence? Why are you glorifying that? But then at the same time, you're going to get very animated about racial prejudice in other contexts. Like I feel like Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson have to be really careful about these things that they help propagate inadvertently, or I think very carelessly, right? Like I think Steven Jackson would have been a very good in the military, because he's the type of guy that like you can tell, it's like, just give me something to die for. Give me the code and I'll show up and I'll I'll put my ass on the line for it. There's a certain honor in that, right? Like he's very into living by this code. And just show me where I need to sacrifice for a code. And I think that's what a lot of this shit boils down to, right? Because I have a theory, and I know I'm going on and on, but I have a theory that men want two things. You can boil down everything men want to two things, and they're very intertwined. One is to fucking be useful. The other is to get approval from women that you are being useful. And everything else stems from those two things. So all this gang shit, all this violence is a misplaced desire for men to be like, I want a code to die by. So you fucking diss my boy Mike Epps, Shannon Sharpe. You said you're going to roll up on him. We're in his hometown. He's got to save face. All right, fuck you. Like, to me, we have to like really be careful about these things. And I know nothing happened with Shannon, but it looked for a second there, because Mike Epps was like, yo, I don't fight. And I just feel it's fucked up to cheer that on. And so when this rap beef comes up, it's uncomfortable, because it's like, you don't know what this is going to trip out into, how this is going to escalate. And that's why I applaud Stephen A. Smith for being like, can you, please stop this shit.
Why would you think that?
Euphoria.
This shit ain't cool. This shit ain't cool.
Everything they say about me is true.
It's not funny at all. 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 It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
Let me just make this one last point. Sorry. We've absorbed this into pop culture in a way that I think is really fucking dangerous and gross.
Well, yeah, that dovetails with my response, because I think that ties into the whole Shaq Shannon Sharpe thing.
We're not going to shoot each other.
They're not going to shoot each other. And this is where it's absorbed into pop culture, right? So the idea of podcast stars, as we were discussing offline, sort of taking the spot of rappers and having beefs back and forth. It rang true because it's sort of like just the pop cultureification of that element of hip hop culture, where it's like, okay, we're gonna take this beef and we're gonna take on each other, and we're gonna do this publicly, and we're gonna try to embarrass you. We're gonna make fun of each other for what you did and did not do. It makes sense. I don't find it as dangerous as you do, though. That's the difference.
Look,
Like I'm not as repelled by it as you seem to be.
I mean,
I think in most cases there's not as much to worry about as you seem to think there is.
well, listen to these stories.
There are instances where it goes overboard, but those are few and far between, at least in the high profile ones.
I mean, but listen to these stories of these dudes. A lot of these dudes have actually been involved in tied to homicides, or somebody, one of their bodyguards or some shit. It's not as far removed as you.
Yeah, but that's rappers. That's not.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Okay.
I'm talking about podcasters.
Not podcasters.
But listen. Yes, not podcasters. But the fact that a comedian and a podcaster had a near brush with something, and that Matt Barnes, and listen, respect to those guys, right? Like I would just like to ask somebody like Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson to consider the weight of their words and how other people might take them further than they should. Because that shit is nothing to laugh at or smirk at. If something potentially really fucked up had happened with somebody in Mike Epps' entourage because they felt threatened by Shannon Sharpe, or they felt Mike Epps was threatened, that would have been a fucking tragedy.
Sure.
Yes, we averted tragedy, and yes, Mike Epps was joking about it the next day on his stand-up, and he said, I apologize, and blah, blah, blah. And we hugged it out, and he said, that motherfucker's strong. He's like squeezing me, but still, man, that's nothing for somebody to even think about possibly dying over. That's what's
sure.
And I'll give you the best example, okay? Jason Whitlock.
Okay.
Who is the first person?
Why would you think that?
To call these rappers idiots. He is like big on like banging on this idea. He's like banging on this idea that like hip hop is destructive, it's nihilistic, it promotes the death of black people. It's like he sounds like you said before, he sounds like somebody's grandmother back in the early days of hip hop. Oh my God, this stuff is, but he brings up a really great point. He, of all people, when Mike Ryan on Dan Lebitard's crew said, if I see Jason Whitlock, he's such a terrible person, it's going to be on site. Jason Whitlock, of all people, again, first to criticize these rappers for all the violence and the gunplay and the glamorization of killing and all that. He said, Tennessee is a stand your ground state. I don't fight.
Wow.
So about Mike Ryan. Yes. He said, come step to me and see, fuck around and find out, is basically what he was saying.
But Whitlock knows that Mike Ryan is not coming to Tennessee.
He's not going to go to any red state. Of course not. And Whitlock is, I think, too level-headed for shit like that. But still, that tells you, these podcast beats are popping off like fucking crazy. You don't seem convinced. I love that smirk.
No. You know what it reminds me of? Back in the day, and it probably still happens, but I haven't heard about it in a while. There used to be this thing called radio beef, where there'd be these radio wars where you have these like DJs on one station who hates another set of DJs on another station, and they would talk shit about each other, and they would beat each other up. Like they'd make fun of each other, and they'd fight. and this used to get them a bunch of attention as they would take on each other, and they would galvanize their fans. Sometimes, Opie and Anthony used to get their fans to take on other groups of fans and to swarm other shows and all this stuff.
Would they have done that to Stern?
Yeah, they were at war with Stern.
Okay.
Stern hated them and he hated them, and they were at Sirius XM together for a very long time, and Howard would not look in Opie's direction.
You mean literally when they would pass each other in this?
Yes, they were on the same floor. He wouldn't look at his own direction. Howard demanded his own entry to his studio, and they'd have to pass each other, and there was just this ongoing war forever.
See, but that's entertainment. Sorry to cut you off.
But that's podcasting. Podcasting is entertainment.
Yes. I'm fine with all this shit being trash talking and not escalating. But in hip hop culture, there is always the threat, the possibility of it going further. And I don't think we should glorify that. I think it's fucked up that we are so casual and inured to that shit.
I'd agree. I don't want it to go further. I agree that it going further is not good. I would say that in most cases it doesn't.
And I think what we're both saying is that if we could bring back, kind of set bounds around trash talking and have a healthy trash talk environment, then it would be better and podcasts too. It would be better for everybody.
Oh, I'd agree with that for sure.
I ain't gonna trash talk Mike Tyson's podcast.
Oh yeah, you better watch out.
Hell no.
Before we head out, I'd like to react to something with you, if you don't mind.
Can we do the Shaq thing though?
Oh, you want to go Shaq?
Because I have a public service announcement for black men.
Oh crap! I might have to go. Let you go single screen on this one, man, because holy crap. You're gonna give a public services announcement for black men? Oh,
yeah, but not black nerds. No, the black nerds will love this. I think they're gonna love this. They're gonna adopt me as an honorary black nerd for saying this.
Okay, I'm adding it back to the screen. You want me to blow it up?
Yeah, can you read the statement, or I can read it?
Okay.
So just to give this some context.
Go ahead.
Luka Doncic was won the NBA MVP.
No,
I'm sorry, Nikola Jokic.
Yeah,
Jokic. I get them all.
Yeah.
They all sound the fucking. Just kidding. Nikola Jokic just won the NBA MVP award, and many are arguing that. Well, I don't know about many, but it is out there that he would have won last year. He would have won 4 in a row. This would have been his 4th in a row if Kendrick Perkins hadn't withheld his, or made a big deal about that he didn't, that he thought Joel Embiid should get it. Okay,
I'm in that category.
As Kendrick. Kendrick Perkins?
I agree that he, if it had not become a racial issue, which it became because Kendrick made it a racial issue, and that as a lot of people, Gilbert Arenas is in this club too, who because of so many European players coming in and dominating the NBA and players from overseas, they didn't like the idea of him being the guy to win 4 straight MVPs, because I don't think anyone's won 4 straight. I don't think so. Winning 3 period is a exclusive club. But not Luka, you got me saying Luka.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Nikola Jokic is in rare air, and he deserved all 4 of them. I'm
like Chad Ochocinco to your Shannon Sharpe. I don't know anything about basketball. That's what Chad Ochocinco says. I need to learn. Anyway, so they, I don't know if they announced it to the public, but on the TNT show, Shaq Kenny. Okay, yes. So Chuck Charles Barkley read who won, and they asked Shaq, and he's like, not to rain on his parade, but I don't like it. So then he drew criticism from people, including Shannon, for saying,
It's
look,
actually
why?
It's actually worse than that.
Please.
They announced the winner, and they brought Jokic on to interview him.
Oh, shit. Okay, that part I didn't see.
And Shaq said to his face that he thought Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is a star of the Oklahoma City Thunder, should have won. To his face. That's the first thing he said.
Yeah, which is a fucked up thing to say to somebody in their moment of triumph. So Shannon responded to this on their show by saying,
Nightcap?
look, if Shaq had the work ethic I had, he would have scored 40,000 points.
Shit.
It wasn't, but it wasn't. So then Shaq responded with this. You took me sticking up for Shai as jealousy, shows how smart you are and how you say anything to get clicks. Blah, 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 blah. So here's some clickbait for you. If you ain't ranked in the top 10 in your profession, then you can't speak on me. Don't forget I know what you did to get where you at. Me jealous? LOL. Sounds like you jealous. So Shannon had said he sounds jealous. I know you're trying to say stay relevant by gossiping on your podcast. We don't believe you need more people. And in case you forgot, 4 rings, 3 finals MVP, top 50, and top 75. Okay, I'm going to stop there.
Google me.
Yeah, this irked the shit out of me.
Okay, why?
And I think this is a wider problem. Shaquille O'Neal, as he himself pointed out, is widely considered to be what, in the top 10 NBA players ever? He's one of the fucking greatest.
2025.
Shannon Sharpe is widely considered to be one of the top 100 somewhere.
Somewhere
Shannon Sharpe even acknowledges himself. He is not to football equivalent to what Shaq is to basketball.
Not even close.
He's not, right. Okay. If you're that fucking accomplished, why do you need to tell me? Why you got to be such a big fucking baby and react this way? Why is your ego so fucking fragile?
It's not.
You don't need to convince me. And this fucking braggadocious bullshit that too many people, especially a certain type of black commentator, they give Deion Sanders all this credit. They give people, they confuse this with confidence. They give Kanye, your boy Kanye, with credit when he's like, I'm the only fucking person to ever convince me who sounded that way was Muhammad Ali. Everybody else, you sound like you're afraid that you have a small dick and you're insecure. Shaq, somebody of that level of accomplishment, does not need to remind anyone of what he's done. If you're that fucking confident, don't you just know it? Don't you just shrug and go, yeah, you can think that if you want, because I know what the fuck I did. Why? This is not confidence. This is my public service to black men, because a lot of people, the Dan Le Batards of the world, will celebrate you for being this way. They'll call it swag because they are insecure about their own masculinity, so they want to pump yours up. Okay? If James wants to disavow this part and walk off the set, okay? Like, this is not confidence. This is not being manly. I'm the last person to lecture people on what it is to be a man, but I can tell you, a confident person does not have to convince you of what they are. In their own space, they know what they are. They don't need to prove shit to you. This is a media ploy to get black people to act a certain way, to over emote, to be overly sensitive, to be overly reactive, and I don't think that's healthy. There was a time, right? Like, now we have people conflating like just being dignified and being like a little more stoic. We have people actually denigrating that as a white trait, which it's not. Okay, you can be the strong, silent type. Somebody disses you, you don't have to fucking clap back at them. You don't have to say shit to them. Why don't you try that instead of bragging? Deion Sanders is another one. listen, if I was in the room with Deion Sanders, I would have a fuck ton of respect for his accomplishments, which makes him the last person who should have to remind me of what he's done. When Tony Romo said something, he's like, Tony, I got a gold jacket. I got a gold jacket. It's like, you sound insecure. How can you be insecure with everything you've done? You're one of the greatest fucking ever in multiple sports. Okay? Stop telling black men this is confidence. It's fucking killing them. That's my PSA.
At Feedback Def, at Savvy RK _ feedbackdef.substack.com.
Where my black nerds at?
I would not pretend to speak for all black nerds. So just want to put that out there first.
Black nerds are not a monolith, said James.
Black nerds are not a monolith.
Black trans nerds matter.
You're foreshadowing something that we must end on. But I'll hold that back now. Look, I do think the braggadocio thing we go too far. It is too much. I think it's stupid. I think that that Shaq is both right and wrong here. Yes, I do think that Shannon Sharpe was making a hot take for his show.
I don't, but okay.
I think he was. Yeah, I think he absolutely was. I think that's what they do.
Before. I think he means it.
You can believe a hot take.
What he's saying is more measured. What he's saying is actually more measured than a hot take. What he's saying is this guy was so fucking awesome and did not. He's actually saying what I said about Jake Paul and about interviewers. Because he then responded to this. It's very measured. He said, I don't think he took the game as seriously as his talent and got as much out of his talent as he could have. Well, and he said that he's basing that on things Shaquille O'Neal himself has said over the years, and also that he was playing with somebody who took the game more seriously than life itself, Kobe Bryant. So that's what he's saying. It's like, you put on weight, you didn't train, you didn't, like I hear Shaquille O'Neal's points, like, why should I get off hit around in practice? That's going to take away. It's not like football where it's good for you to get, you know what I'm saying? Like I understand Shaquille O'Neal's point. Why should I practice so much when I'm going to get fouled like crazy? It's going to fuck up my ability to achieve in the actual games. But I mean, he didn't take, he did the rap thing and so I think that's a fair point, especially Shaquille O'Neal fucking pisses all over a lot of players in his criticism. Why is he so fucking sensitive now all of a sudden?
Okay, I was addressing it from a different angle than you were. I think that commentators, whether they believe it or not, they make statements to inflame people on purpose in order to gain attention for their show. It's part of what you do. It's YouTube shorts culture, right? We both have a ton of them, right? And the ones that where one of us has said something outlandish, or something that was sort of inflaming, are the ones that usually do the best, and they get watched over and over again, and I get all sorts of insults. Hence the Shannon Sharpe hive. The last time I went after them, they came after me hard, and they bugged me and fuck them. So I
didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it.
The Shannon Sharpe Bay Hive.
Oh yeah.
The Shea Hive.
Yeah, the Shea Hive did not like the fact that I was counting Shannon's pockets. That I brought up his salary history. Despite the fact that the man claimed that he made more on one interview than he did during any 1 year of his career, which is just not true. I just don't believe it.
Why didn't you lead with this? This is talk about burying the lead. Holy shit, I didn't know this.
Well, there was a gap in between our recordings, so I happened in between, and then I got sick, I think. So Shannon, look, you can prove it to me. You can prove it to me that between your Cat Williams interview and I believe it was mid-February that you made more than $5 million. Post it. All you gotta do is a screenshot. You can blur out your name and all the pertinent information except to give me the check. I want to see the check. I don't believe it. All right. I not only don't believe it, DJ Vlad doesn't believe it. All right. Hardcore YouTubers do not believe that Shannon Sharpe made more than $5 million off of one YouTube interview. In fact, in that period of time where he got up to, at that point, it was on 40 million views. At that point, he probably made somewhere around maybe $1 million. Could be. I think it's probably a stretch. Probably a stretch. $1 million is probably a stretch. Probably somewhere in Vlad's estimate was he made around 50 million. Not 50 million, but 500 million. No, not 500 million.
500,000.
500,000. Around there. You know, just straight up off of YouTube. That's so I'll put that aside for the moment and stick to the point.
All the people who like are into Jewish conspiracy theories are gonna go off on you too.
All right, whatever.
This is way more. I like this side of you a lot. This is way more incendiary than anything I said. And I can't believe you saved this for the end. I didn't know this. Yeah. This is incredible.
Screw Shannon. And screw the Shea Hive. Club Shay.
Hey, that's James said that. I'm not saying that. I'll heart you, Shay.
All right. So, all right, to the point about Shaq. I agree with that assessment of him career-wise, that he did underachieve. We are talking, if we're comparing him and Shannon Sharpe, essentially, Shannon Sharpe was a 7th round pick. I think 7th round. 7th round pick. He was a late round pick.
7th round
Hall of Famer. Versus Shaq being, at that point, the most impressive. He was what Victor Wembanyama is. He was one of the most impressive prospects ever. At that point, he was a number 1 overall pick and probably would have been a number 1 overall pick in any draft 5 years before or 5 years after. Like that's the kind of prospect he was. And, I think over Chris Webber, over Anthony Hardaway. Yeah, I don't think that's a stretch of a statement at all. So, it's for Shaq, in order to peak out, he could be lazy. He could come to. He said himself that he came to. It's usually into the regular. He played himself into shape. He didn't come into great shape, especially by the time he got to the Lakers. And as you said, I agree with you. That was part of the friction he had with Kobe, because Kobe was obsessive about everything, and was willing to do anything to come to work, you know, at peak shape. So I think that point is correct. But I also think he said it because he thought that beating up Shaq would get him his podcast attention. That's the side where I'm with Shaq on. Here's my slap at Shaq. Shaq should not be looking down on the way he was talking. He was looking down on Shannon for saying this on his podcast and trying to get his attention for his podcast. A, Shaq's got a podcast, and B, Shaq, your show's about to be canceled because the company that owns your show won't pay for the NBA. So shut it the fuck up. James Brown TV.
Well,
JamesBrownTV.substack.com at James Brown TV. Go ahead. At me. I don't care.
I mean, look. Shannon talks about sports. Generally, he talks about football and basketball specifically, right? And there was a story Shaquille O'Neal responded basically in poor taste and then brought himself into the conversation, immediately reminding the audience that, you know, he thought he should have won more MVPs, which shows that he is like, you can make an inference from that. Well, you're still salty about that. Like, why are you know, and if you are as accomplished as you say you are, why is it that you don't feel the satisfaction of it, that you got to go around checking people when they don't acknowledge it? Why shouldn't it just feel good to you? Which means that bragging, most of the time, as we are all taught as children, shows that you actually don't believe it yourself. Bragging is a fucking mask for a serious insecurity.
I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that. I'd have to think about that. That's an interesting thought. I don't have an answer offhand, but I'd have to think about that one. I know that's not the best podcast answer, but I really
No, I like it. We don't.
I want to think about that.
Like, I don't find
Yeah.
there's a difference between being assertive and being a braggart, right? And if you're bragging all the time, I just don't find it convincing at all. I think it screams that you want other people to validate what you think you accomplished. It also screams you don't believe it. Because again, when you know what you've done, yeah, whatever. Say whatever the fuck you want. I know how I feel about it. It just rolls off your back. That's to me what confidence is. It's not like, oh, let me tell you who I am. Let me tell you who I am. Let me remind you who I am. And why should people of Shaquille O'Neal's stature give a fuck what anybody else? He's acknowledged. He's going down in history. He's universally acknowledged as one of the greatest. So,
and look, and I think he was somewhat right on Shannon, in that he did underachieve. He could have had more. He could have had more. He should have had more. I don't think we've seen a star quite like him. LeBron, he's in that LeBron kind of category where it's like he should have had more. He was that dominant a figure.
And I mean, Shannon wasn't saying that from the perspective that his career was better. He was saying, like, you are so supremely talented. Why didn't we get the most out of you? Which, again, brings us full circle to everything we've been talking about since the beginning of this.
Yeah.
I want to send you one thing that I would love to share with our audience as a perfect capper to this part of the conversation. This is Shaquille O'Neal reacting to Shannon's hot take.
Oh, that one? Okay.
I just emailed it to you.
No, I think you dropped it in. You talk about the thing he
no,
dropped in the chat?
it's a still photo. Yes, but it's a still photo. You could also show it the thumbnail, whatever. Yeah.
Oh. All right. Give me a moment.
Yeah. But I mean, as you think about this, what I said, bragging and what it says about the person, it's to me, I see it as a signal of immediate weakness and vulnerability. That it's easy to get under someone's skin.
It's interesting. It's just an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. I'd have to think more about it. Oh, there we go. I don't know why that took so long to get to me, but there we go. We'll go right there. And It's there we go. There we go. Yeah.
That's Shaquille O'Neal responding to Shannon's hot take.
Oh yeah, on Hot Ones. Eyes bulging out.
He said, "I'm about to shit. I'm about to shit my drawers or something." Didn't he? I'm about to shit on myself. Didn't he say that?
I didn't watch it. No, I didn't watch it
He
at
said
all.
something like that when he was on it. He was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
I'd like to cap this by going to a non straight up media story, but it's a story that I was holding back from responding to myself, even though I really wanted to, because I wanted to hear your reaction to this. You probably have seen this, but I want this in front of the world. Our darling Columbia student, by the way, Idiocracy subreddit, awesome. Awesome.
I'll have to join.
Need to join it. It's called Columbia Student Gets Grilled by Reporter After the Student Demands that the university send food and water to student protesters occupying Hamilton Hall, Columbia being Columbia in New York City. Okay. It's a minute 19 of brilliance. Okay. For those who did not hear it, why should Columbia University be obligated to provide food and water to students who have taken over a building on the university campus? Logical question, right?
The volume is not working at all.
What?
I'm not hearing it.
Oh, you're not hearing the volume? Oh,
nope.
That sucks. Give me one moment. Ready.
So I'll take this opportunity to encourage the audience to support the Black Nerd Fund. This is a cause very dear to our hearts.
All right. You hear that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
Okay. All right. You come to my house. You've taken over a room in my house. And you are violating my rules in my house. Whether you paid me or not, I'm not obligated to do anything for you. Is my logic like off at all?
No, of course not. I think that's a creative answer. This person should go to law school.
Oh, she's probably a law student. Probably.
I love that expression. That's a really...
It really says it all. She's perplexed by why would you ask this? And what the hell is this guy wearing? I mean... Well,
it looks like a Palestinian support. It looks like it's intended to be... I forgot the name of that.
I think it's Khalif. Something
yes,
like that.
I think so.
But you know, the with the belly button, I don't think. But all right, I'm gonna focus on my favorite media figure over the last few weeks.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in, I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students.
Okay, you have squatted in my house. I have an obligation to you. You are violating my rules. I have an obligation to you. You are no longer a friendly part of our community. You have decided that, hey, the cause that you are representing, right or wrong, because you can make arguments about it. I mean, I'm not even making the fight, the Palestinian Gaza Strip versus Israel. I mean, certainly, I don't think there's any angels in any of it, but okay. Except the people stuck in between, honestly, because I think they're getting a raw deal. But when it comes to the leadership of both these factions, everybody sucks. My perspective. So you've decided that this was such a big cause that you have decided to violate the rules of this university and barricade yourself into this entity. So you're demanding food and water?
Well, also, to what extent were they actually blocking people from getting to class?
At one point, they shut down the classes.
Right. So the needs of the students, but they're also
Yeah.
paying for the education, so you're depriving them of that.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just this one thing. They were disrupting everything, as you do. Look, I've protested in the past, and part of the thing when you're choosing to be a protester, you are choosing to disrupt, and you shouldn't expect the system to be like, oh yeah, nice job for protesting, take care of you. No. Once you've decided that you're going to be a protester, you're going to face a new set of rules. You have put your thumb in the eye of the system, and the system is going to bite back.
Right. They're not going to serve you coffee and donuts.
Yeah, but that's what she expects. Coffee and donuts. How dare you not provide me with coffee and donuts? Unless you want to add some more. There's more of her here.
No. Let's hear her.
Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
Okay. You are protesting. Oh. All right. First of all, I want to see some proof that people are dying. My guess is that's hyperbole. Probably.
You say
I hope. But hey, when you decided to do this, she doesn't have any. She looks like, based on her expression and the expression of the dude behind her, I don't think that they have any sense that, hey, there might be consequences for our actions.
No, but can't they send somebody for water in their own group?
They could easily. I mean, look, even when you look back at the George Floyd protests, I think of that area of Minneapolis and that area of Seattle that they blocked off. They sent out people for stuff and they brought back stuff, and like they could easily do this, but no, these are people who are entitled brats.
Well, and there's something else too. I mean, there's a level of, I think what they were hoping for was to push this to the point that they saw Evergreen and other colleges capitulate, and they're counting on that. Well, I also think there's a level of delusion in their thinking, or not thinking, but in their psyche, that is deeply disturbing and really, you're not dealing with a rational mindset. Let's put it that way. But I also think from a more calculating perspective, they're counting on the university caving because of the hit that they think the university is taking to its image. That's what I think is happening. And I'm not quite as convinced that this. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No. I'll wait.
Well, I think the reason why they're caving, they're expecting that the university to cave is because of the last 5 years of, from DEI land to George Floyd to the whole thing with in Portland, where they basically ceded they allowed basically riots in their town for 100 days straight. And,
with the support of the mayor.
Yes. And so on and so forth. And they assumed that it was just a new day, and that, and these are young. They're young kids. So they were what, 18?
18
younger?
to 20, 18 to 21.
While they saw this stuff happen.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
They were younger even, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. They would have been in high school.
Some of them were early on in high school, mid through high school, and they saw that people who are their age now, not entirely, but a chunk of them, be able to get away with all of this, and like without much trouble whatsoever. You actually had a few being able to sue municipalities and make off from it. So, it's just their expectation.
Yeah, and they've also grown up in a culture where we're awash in gaslighting, right? Like we make an unreasonable capitulation to pronoun language and all of that surrounding. We have all, not all, but like culture more broadly has been swept along down that track. And so they understand on an animal intuitive level that people are afraid to hit back, right? Or to stand up to them. Or they're either afraid to stand up, or they go way far in standing up, and there's counter protests and there's violence directed at them, which then they crave that kind of response too, right? So they crave a sense of opposition at the same time as they also demand that everybody who's closer to their outlook, because just says, oh yeah, okay, we'll let you take the wheel. Hopefully that's changing.
It might be, but I'm not quite there yet. More from our friend.
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So.
Okay, the for those who couldn't hear that, it was a little faint, but that was the reporter saying essentially what we said. Hey, you put yourself here.
So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries. We want to take up this building. Now, would you please bring us food?
Okay. What you're saying is that you want to be revolutionaries. But please bring us food and water. Great question.
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
They're stopping the delivery of food.
We are looking for a commitment from them that they will not stop it violently.
They haven't stopped it.
Wow. I don't know to what extent it has been attempted, but we're looking for a commitment.
Okay. This went on for another full 20 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like that, you and I know people who I think could easily fall into that kind of, I don't know, pattern of engagement. But something about that just strikes me as this like weird. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if that lady was a psyop, but that's just me. And I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't either. She's believable as that, but then there's also like, how do you discredit a movement? You make it sound completely insane.
Yeah, that certainly sounds insane.
How do you discredit
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
I take no position on the movement. So,
but how do you undermine the idea of opposing Israel's military actions in Gaza over the last, whatever it was since October 7th, right?
Yeah.
So you attach it to this. So you undercut it by making it seem like a crazy, like hyper woke, demented group of people that wants that versus because there are lots of people who can expound on Israel in sober ways
Sure.
and many perspectives on that, right?
Yeah,
You don't have to
absolutely.
be like
There's a lot-
possessed.
yeah, there's a lot of really smart voices where the position could be laid out clearly. I guess their thought was, hey, if we did this on our campus and we forced Columbia University to divest, by the way, most of the cases, from what I understand from the divestment demands, they don't know that there is investments or how much investments there are. But if we make this demand and they divest, that we would have done something. Honestly, I don't. I could see protesting the U.S. government on this one.
Right.
I don't see protesting a university.
Right. It's completely incoherent. It's just like an empty belch of a gesture.
And I certainly did those empty belches back in the day when I was her age. I mean, I certainly did. But this one feels like even a further cry, because at least I was directly, because at that time I was in college in the early 2000s, so we're talking Afghanistan and Iraq War. And Iraq War in particular was the one that riled me up, because it was so clear even at that point that this doesn't sound right. Like, how, like what? Like, how are they involved with 9/11?
Yeah, the
Like,
New York
what's
Times was complicit in lying to us about it,
yeah, without a doubt.
and their
And
reputation should forever be fucking in the like garbage heap ever since.
and here's how blatant it was. I graduated from college in 06. It was already in journalism studies materials that the New York Times lied about it by 06.
Right, that's only 2.5 years later.
Yeah, it was that obvious.
Yeah, that's really so fuck the New York Times. Every opportunity I get to say that, I relish. So just that's the daily fuck the New York Times for me. But yeah, I mean, look, this level of like complete and utter unreasonableness is rampant, and it's going to come back from the right.
Yeah, and it's
like
going to be unreasonable the other way too, right?
right. So again, I remain optimistic that kids can be trained out of this by being shielded from the types of manipulative and coercive communication styles that breed this kind of thing. Because I mean, what she's doing is fucking gaslighting, man. Like, it's like really intense. Like, actually, well, they're human beings. They're students who pay for a meal plan. I mean, that's something I think a lawyer would say too. But it's just so like it's meant to spin you around so that if you give in a little bit to it, you're all of a sudden way so far removed from the truth, and that's scary that so many people think they can do that and that it's going to work. And I just think kids can be shown that they don't have to do that.
I hope so. I am less optimistic. I don't think that they will be. I think we're going to live with this for a lot longer. I think, and barring some convulsion, which is certainly possible, culturally, I think we're just sort of stuck with this logic and we're not going to, and it's gonna be like really, really weird dealing with each other until there's something big and large that brings us all together.
Yeah, I mean, you've been saying that, and that certainly is a plausible potential. You know, there's no guarantee that this kind of thing, like, it doesn't necessarily run out of oxygen as quickly as I think Americans like to think it does, because we don't
No.
have the experience of other societies that have just completely come under the grip of something like this, and it could take generations. But
Yeah, it could be generations.
But I think the thing that will make it more interesting here is that we're going to deal with two different permutations of it at the same, more or less at the same time.
Tell me more.
Well, I just think the conservative version of that is coming back. It's like a train.
Yeah.
I can hear it rumbling down the tunnel.
Well, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, look, it's. I mean, I guess the question is, how does it appear, right? So, largely, this stuff that we're talking about didn't appear in politics first. It appeared in culture first, and ended up in politics. So, are you suggesting that the response is in politics or it's in culture?
I think it's definitely in culture. I think so much of the podcast sphere was like they all made their grave, not all, but so many podcasters made their gravy opposing this until Israel came along, and then they started to sound like this lady, right? So it's like something like that can just immediately reshuffle the deck and basically expose everybody as snowflakes who
Okay.
don't want to hear what they don't want to hear. And if it's diffuse like that, if it's coming from multiple directions, like right now, we're at an interesting time, right? Because the last 10 years, institutions, the seats of power have accommodated this kind of rhetoric quite a bit. So government, like, it started in culture, then worked its way into government. But our like sort of political infrastructure is so not willing to oppose Israel that's now hit a hard wall, and you're seeing the political institutions stand their ground and not budge. So now it's like they were going along with everything else, like the DEI and the trans and you know, the medicalization of trans, all that stuff, and now it's like all of a sudden the brakes are on. So like, where are we now? So this is a disruptive. This is a disruptive moment to the momentum we were on. Now, what happens after this? What comes into the fray? Who enters the chat after
Yeah.
this wave of protests?
I mean, I could, you know, there's certainly some guesses I could take. I mean, that perhaps there's, I don't know, the Republicans don't seem all that competent. So it kind of like, if you know, take heart, Democrats, you probably will remain in power. So, but I could see, I don't know, some sort of I thought for a moment it was Ron DeSantis. That kind of figure who was like not afraid to engage in this stuff.
Or
But-
engage against this stuff, and then he turned into somebody who wanted to like build his own version of it. Or he exposed himself as
But I don't know if that's the right messenger. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Who knows? Maybe it's another celebrity. That wouldn't be shocking. Honestly, you know, like I used to like really seriously think that like qualifications mattered for these kinds of for presidential roles and stuff, and for political roles, and I don't believe that anymore for lots of reasons. You look at, I mean, Barack Obama was barely, didn't have a very long political career at all. He was barely president in the Senate and kind of got the Senate job because of a scandal with Jerry Ryan's husband. Then you have Donald Trump, who had no political experience at all.
Keep talking.
Who had no political experience at all, and Trump just rose to prominence, and he seems on the verge of at least having another shot in the general. We'll see what happens there. And then you have Biden, who honestly I don't see any sort of. I see very little hope of him as sort of being entirely competent himself. I mean, he's doddering and old and all that such. So I don't know what kind of qualifications it would take to do it. So I could see a scenario where you end up with another celebrity rising to the occasion, sort of becoming the figure to step forward and grab the reins of everything. I think that that's not so far off. That I don't know. Before everything, all the awfulness happened, maybe it wasn't Alec Baldwin. You know what I mean? Some figure that's ready to make a pivot, and but I don't think it's going to happen from the current political strata. I just, my gut says no.
Well, our sounder, why would you think that? Is actually
Why would you think that?
Is actually
Why
Whitlock
would you
saying
think that?
Is from Whitlock saying that Stephen A. He thinks Stephen A. is being groomed for public office, and when people say, "Oh no, there's no way that could happen," he's like, "Why would you think it wouldn't?"
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't think Stephen A. My gut says no, not him. I think he's partially using it to leverage his way into a bigger bag from ESPN. And also I think he sees guys like we talked about earlier, Bill Simmons, as a peer. And this peer was able to leverage, his stardom into creating this thing that was larger than himself, that he made him worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think he's not alone in that he thinks it should have been him. And I think his version of that, I think is more, Bill Simmons created a lot of jobs. I don't think Steve is going to create a lot of jobs. but I think that I think that he thinks that perhaps he can make himself a bigger figure. And I also get the sense that, and this is from listening to him in interviews, that he wants to transcend sports.
Yes, that is clear.
That sports is not enough.
We'll see. I mean, I don't think he can become like a Bob Costas figure, but maybe I'm wrong.
He believes it, but I don't think it's accurate,
Yeah, and as far as where the next political, I guess, game changer comes from, figure wise, that's a really interesting point you're making, and I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, much like Donald Trump. It was sort of out of the blue,
right?
Even it might be someone like Trump who threatened to run over and over, and then they finally run, and then it takes off. I mean, that's what happened with Trump.
Yeah. I mean, once the populist cat is out of the bag, then other people are gonna try to use some of the same tactics, to stir people up. But I wonder if the Israel Gaza situation, or I'm taking it as a reminder that political allegiances can be shuffled all of a sudden, and all of a sudden what you thought was the cultural landscape and that the sides were very clearly delineated and you knew who was playing against who, that can shift overnight. I mean, it literally happened overnight.
Yeah, I think things definitely could shift again, and I would imagine that it will. We'll have some game changing events, and we can. Yeah.
And we will be here calling the games.
Yeah.
For the Black Nerd, for the Black Nerd Squad.
Yeah. On that note, Savvy, you done here?
Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
For
this one
me,
was
at least.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Certainly.
I don't know about for the audience, but I'm sorry I didn't put my thing on mute when I had to run out the room for a second.
No worries.
Did you hear that? All that?
Yeah, we did. Later.
All right.